is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, gang? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson and Michael Remis with you. We got a big one today as we move on from the end of the streaks after the Jets lost 4-1 to the Bruins last night and get ready for 2 games against the Toronto Maple Leafs before the Jets get on to their well-earned player break. And Connor, along with Bones, head to the All-Star game the following week. Obviously, we're going to dive into last night's loss in Boston and then start looking ahead to tomorrow's first of the home-and-home between the Winnipeg Jets and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And to do that, we're going to welcome in Carlo Colaiacovo, first up on TSN. Looking forward to having Carlo on. Mike McIntyre is going to jump on the program as well for the latest on the Winnipeg Jets. I'll look back at the streaks that was and now focus on these up-to-coming games. We're also going to dive into a little bit of the Sea Bears offseason. The schedule just announced today. Home opener on May 24th. Looking forward to welcoming in Coach Mike Taylor. Talk a little bit about the Sea Bears offseason and what he's doing behind the scenes, getting ready for year 2, as well as his thoughts on knowing that he's got a schedule to look forward to and start planning a season around. So lots of good stuff coming up. We'll hit the Coolbet Lines later on today. 9 games in the National Hockey League tonight. So plenty of hockey watching out there for you with the Jets being on the road, and then all eyes on Toronto for the Winnipeg Jets. All eyes on Toronto today for the skate. We'll get you the latest on Mark Scheifele from Toronto today as he's ready to go. But just before we bring in Michael Remis and sort of dive into it all, big thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Our friends at Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Modern Man Barbershop, the Winnipeg Jets, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, and of course the gang out at Aitken's Lake Wilderness Lodge. Michael Remis, what's going on? Have you gotten over the disappointment of the empty netter that ended the Jets' 3 goals or less streak?
No, this is going to sit with me for a while, Huss. Can't believe they would jeopardize it. Let's pour one out for the streaks, Huss. There was 2 there that ended last night. 34 games at 3 or fewer, 1 short of tying Minnesota for the modern-day record. Could have had a banner for that one. That was Scott Billick's idea on Kenny and Rennie, to get a banner for that. Could have had one.
Raise a banner?
Could have raised a banner. And 15 games at 2 or less, all ending last night. And I don't know, after they put up 9 against Montreal, is kind of the opposite where, when Boston came in here, the Jets were catching Boston at a vulnerable time, and it seemed like Boston's catching the Jets at a vulnerable time. You're missing Scheifele, you're missing Velarde. They needed Hellbuck to be superhuman. To be honest, I was expecting a lot more shots against from Boston. The Jets did a really nice job limiting the number of chances, but, the puck bounces around, it gets scrambly in front, and you leave guys wide open in front of the net. They're going to score. So it was fun to debate if they should have kept Hellbuck in a 2-goal game to preserve the streak. But part of having a streak where you have 34 games with 3 or less goals is you're playing well. You're winning games. You're not, you're in close games all the time. You're taking extra time. And like the Jets record, they lost, convincingly yesterday. And last 18 games, 14-2-2. I mean, that's really, really impressive, Huss. And they're still in a great position. But to lose the streak on an empty netter, I mean, I'm just picturing like the gif of the guy in The Undertaker when he lost the WrestleMania streak to Brock Lesnar. I mean, this is up there with all-time streaks coming to an end. Losing on an empty netter, I don't know. Doesn't sit right with me, but I mean, they would. It's on them. It's on them. I like to joke. Like I tweeted, I've made jokes like in a Kenny and Rennie chat. The streak is greater than winning. Like more important than winning. Like obviously, do what you can to get the 2 points. You put stuff on Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter, and people don't know if you're serious or joking.
Yes, there's no sarcasm font. There's no sarcasm font.
And I like to toe that line, and people don't get it. So that's fine. And I'll just let them not get
Yeah,
it.
listen, it's disappointing that that streak ended. And I mean, listen, I think some fans are like, whatever. It's about winning hockey games. And if you're down 3-1 to a good team like that, you got a couple minutes left, you pull the goalie and try and score a couple. And listen, I had absolutely no issue with what they did. I was surprised, like, there were some fans, that were getting at me that were bent. It's like, what the heck are they doing pulling the goaltender? I mean, you got to keep the streak going. I mean, as Royal Sport just said, streaks don't print banners. Much
Sure they
like
do.
you
just
can't
said.
raise a banner for being first overall for a week in January in 2024.
Oh, they should.
It's
Gotta celebrate the wins.
like we wouldn't even raise a banner on WST for that. I don't think the team's doing that. But listen, as far as the game goes, the Boston Bruins were the better team last night, and I don't think there was much of a doubt about that. And to be honest, Reem, I mean, listen, we knew the team was up against it without Mark Scheifele. Then to find out in warm up that Gabriel Velarde also wasn't going to be playing. They weren't at their best for sure, and they didn't play their best as well. The one thing I'm sure you were excited about, though, and it had been a long time coming, for the first time in forever, Bones pulled out the industrial blender.
Mm-hmm.
It was blender time last night. All of the lines getting shaken up at on a couple of different occasions. All 4 lines being changed with players moving in and around. But listen, the Bruins were the better team. You knew that they would come in an ornery mood. And I'll tell you what, I mean, as much as the Jets didn't have their top game and were not that dangerous in and around Jeremy Swayman, they still got some pucks on net. They held the Bruins to a very reasonable number of shots against in 21. I think Hellebuck still made some big saves. But to me, I mean, the game really turned. Like throughout the third period, that was a very tight, close game. And unfortunately, that series of events that turned into Jake DeBrusk's unassisted, technically shorthanded goal. I mean, that was not really a shorthanded goal. The guy had been out of the box for all of half a second when the puck went in. But that was the end of the dream of the 3 goals a game, because you knew at that point probably the team was going to be pushing for some offense and potentially making it through. I was more disappointed with the 22 straight with 2 goals or less, which was very much looking like it could be continued. But it didn't happen, and they move on from it. Takeaways, though, for the game in the first couple of periods, especially the second period, I thought the Boston Bruins really ramped it up. And, the Jets just weren't as crisp as they normally were. They weren't passing to the places that they normally do. And listen, they just didn't have their A game last night. And when you're undermanned against a hungry Boston team that remembers how you embarrassed them just a few weeks ago here in Winnipeg, I can't say the result was that surprising.
Yeah, I think you thought going in, Hellebuck would need to be superhuman for them to win. There's just, you kind of felt it the last couple games. They're missing Scheifele, Velarde, game time decision doesn't go. You're in a tough spot, and they certainly battled and gave themselves a shot in the third period. But we can talk about this again. The power play going 0 for 3, and you give up a shorthanded goal. I mean, credit to the penalty kill, though. It goes 3 for 3, but the power play's been a talking point all season. And it needs to bail them out one time or another. Now that the streak is over, we can talk about, we can focus on the real issues, the power play, which we learned yesterday, well, not yesterday, but is worse than the San Jose Sharks power play. And it's amazing how a team at the top of the league can have a power play that is so poor that a team at the bottom is better than them. So we'll see what happens with this power play going forward. They're going to need it, I think, in these next 2 games and going forward towards the playoffs. But it's been a concern all year, and here it is, 23rd in the league at 16.3%. And just for the record, the Sharks and the Ducks, rebuilding teams ahead of them at 17.4, 18.5, so slightly better.
Big win for the Sharks last night at the expense of the Los Angeles Kings. We'll get to a little bit of fallout from that game in a minute. Hey, shout out to everybody in chat. I see our guy Ezzy is here from Illegal Curve. What up, Ez? And Ezzy has said He has pledged his allegiance to the Chiefs going for the Super Bowl with no sarcasm. Good for you, you were definitely welcome in the kingdom. But this is one comment that stands out that I have to say I agree with. Jets number one, without 55, it's so obvious what the Jets need. Chevy, go get us another center. And I know we've had a lot of talks about, what the Jets should be looking to add at the trade deadline. I don't think anyone that was on a fortification of the top six and another center that could come in and play with those top players was not buoyed by what they saw last night. At least their argument was, because it is quite clear, Remis, that this is just an absolutely different team. And their offensive potential goes down significantly when 55 isn't in the lineup.
Yeah, I'm 100%. A lot tougher. And they did switch up the lines to ended with Nino, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton, Connor, Nemesnikov, Ehlers, Toninato, Perfetti, Iafallo, Barron, Kupari, and Axel. And yeah, you see, Mark Scheifele, he's a bona fide number one. And, for a team where you ask who the number two center is, it puts Ken Wiebe into an 18-minute pretzel before the season. I don't has that number two center question really been answered?
He could drop another 18 minutes, no problem, on that topic right now.
Yeah, he 100% could. So
many of us could.
So you see the question coming up for the trade line. What do the Jets need? I think pretty clear with Scheifele, they do need some help at forward. But I would say if Morrissey's out, you'd say, they need a defenseman as well. So you talk about MVPs for this team. You can go Hellbuck, Scheifele, Morrissey. Pick your order on those three, but those guys aren't really replaceable at their position within the lineup.
No doubt. And listen, I thought Josh had it wasn't like he had a bad game. It was sort of a rough game for he and Dylan DeMello. And DeMello got whacked by Pasternak on that first play where he ended up putting in front of the net. I mean, credit to DeMello. He said that he's got to be better and not have that happen despite getting whacked the way that he did. But, man, it was that second period, those two shifts, the never-ending shifts for Morrissey and DeMello. I mean, one was, I think, about 2 minutes, 20 seconds, and then they went right back out for the next one and were in their own end for the better part of 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I cannot remember the last time a Jet unit got kept out there for that long. And, again, you got to give credit to Boston. They were a hungry team. They're the best team in the Eastern Conference right now. As of today, I believe they're number one in the National Hockey League, or right there with Vancouver. So, they basically took advantage of some of the weaknesses in the Winnipeg Jets lineup and really took it to them at times. But again, it was crazy. As much as Boston controlled the play and controlled the puck, they weren't getting a ton of shots on Connor Hellebuyck. And I thought the guys that were out there kind of hung in there. The overall performance of the club, I know people use the term effort. It wasn't a great effort. I mean, I think the guys that were playing were given a ton of effort. You can't hang with the Boston Bruins for 60 minutes without, but they just weren't on as much as they needed to be. And there was a number of times, a perfect example is on those shifts where I know guys are tired, but you have the opportunity to clear the zone to get it out, and it didn't happen. And Boston was relentless in, maintaining the pressure on Winnipeg, especially in that second period. But credit to the Jets. They came out and were much better, had far more of an answer in the third period, and made that a game that potentially could have gotten out of hand in the first 40 the way Boston was bringing it at times.
Yeah, Boston got on the board, right away, and the Jets answered back. Nemesnikov tipping in a DeMello shot, and the shots in the first period pretty even, 6-5. Again, low number of shots and goals. I thought we were going to see some kind of offensive explosion here. I mean, the shots finished 21-21, and you mentioned that second period, Boston outshooting the Jets 10-4, and here are those shift times. Josh Morrissey in the second period, midway through, 2 minutes, 43 seconds, ended with a penalty, and then goes right back for a next one, 2 minutes, 59 seconds. He had another shift of a minute 46, ending with a goal against. So, I mean, they're relying on those guys so much, and I don't blame him. You almost didn't blame him for taking that penalty in the game. So,
well, you just know. I mean, when that happens, it's going to probably end one of two ways. either a puck over the glass penalty or some other penalty just because you're so tired and you're hanging on for dear life. And that is exactly what happened for the Winnipeg Jets.
But DeMello,
let's hear what Bones had to say about the game. I mean, I think that, he liked the way that the team came back in that third period and really pressed the issue and got some more action on Jeremy Swayman. And I know, listen, Bones isn't making excuses. They just weren't at their best. Here's what Bones had to say about last night's 4-1 loss in Boston.
What did Boston do well defensively against you?
I thought it was more us, to be honest. I didn't like how that's probably the worst game we've had in a long time, and with our breakouts. We were slow moving it when the passes were soft, so that allows Boston to play their game. And so I think if we had moved the puck quicker and harder, then you wouldn't be asking me that question. So I put more on us than I do Boston. But give them credit, like they played hard. They didn't get a whole lot of room either. So it was a tough game. It was a grinded out game, but the best period we put in was the third, and we would hope you get that second goal. We didn't get it.
Yeah, they talked a lot about how cohesive and connected you were in the game in Winnipeg. That was lacking a little bit in the first two periods. Is that what you said?
I thought so, and again, it started with our breakouts. We were slow getting back, we were slow moving, and then when we got it, we were soft with the passes. So that just let them put a little more pressure. We had some unnecessary time in our zone because of turnovers. So give them credit. We move on.
All right, so there's Bones, and Reem, I mean, for the standard of 23-24 season, that's about as close to Bones ripping the team as we've seen. Now, he's been in front of microphones after 30 wins so far this year. But I have to admit, I sort of agree with his assessment. I mean, you knew Boston would be coming, and Boston was good. But a lot of the issues were somewhat self-inflicted and just the Jets not doing things that they've traditionally consistently done very well, move the puck quickly out of their own zone. And part of that was on them. I do give maybe a little more credit to Boston with the way they were forechecking and in the right spots. But when you have a hard time even getting out of your own zone, that could lead to a long night against a team like the Bruins.
Yeah, Bruins are a good team, and it's fundamentals, tape-to-tape passing, being able to get out of your own end, and I mean, was pretty subdued compared to some of the stuff from last year. But it did sound like a bit of a rip job there from Rick Bowness on the team. But I think
the standard is so different from last year. Like, I don't know whether if we do a best of Bones at the end of this calendar year, but that is, I mean, again, he's been so pleased with what his team's brought in night out. He has not been disgusted. There's been nothing like we saw last year, and that's because of the way that the team's played and continue to do that. All that being said, they're going to need to be a heck of a lot better if they want to get 2 points in Toronto tomorrow night.
Yeah, Toronto's coming up, and they can score. They also give up a lot of goals. They're expecting some high event games against them. Austin Matthews, the guy's an absolute machine. Like, could we be seeing a 70-goal season if he manages to stay healthy? The guy's got 38 goals in 44 games. So I'm really looking forward to these next two games because, it's against Toronto, and how the sky would be falling if the Jets were to sweep too. And Toronto's had an interesting stretch here where they're in a playoff spot, but you look at the way they're winning and
not by much,
right? And they're not winning in regulation. You go down the list, and only 19 wins in regulation. It's bottom third of the league, and this is a team that's had high expectations, and they've kind of taken a step back from where they were last year.
It's only 15 regulation wins, actually.
Oh, I meant overtime wins. Sorry, this guy shorted by the wrong thing. You're right, 15.
Yeah, no, I mean,
sorry, I knew that seemed high.
They've got 20. They've got 23 wins overall, 4 in OT and 4 in shootouts. I mean, the Ottawa Senators are last in the Atlantic Division, and they have 14 regulation wins. So listen, credit to the Leafs for finding points. They're a deadly team when you get to the extra frame. But as I said, we'll get into the Leafs in a minute with Carlo Colaiacovo and Mike McIntyre when he joins us. I mentioned the Industrial Blender came out. All sorts of line blending. And the power play, obviously missing Mark Scheifele and Gabriel Velarde. Here's what Bones had to say about all the upheaval with his forward units last night.
Clearly, we weren't generating anything, so we had to change something. The third period we created a lot more chance, put a lot more pucks at the net, so we got what we wanted. We just didn't get that second goal.
Power play again, bit of a concern, or?
One thing about the power play you got to keep in mind is we have never had a chance to work Mark, Casey, and Gabe together. We haven't. One of them's been hurt the whole time. The second unit hasn't been the problem, but in fairness to those guys, can we do a better job? Yes, there's no question. I think I still think we can shoot the puck a lot more, but I think when we finally get a chance to put Mark, Gabe, and Casey on the same unit with Nick, then you're going to. I think it'll turn around. The second unit's been pretty good. We weren't good enough with it tonight, but it's something we're just going to have to stay on top of.
Well, I didn't definitely get some more production from the power play. Would have been a big boost last night in a game that was a 1-goal game right up till just over 5 minutes left in the game. I mean, Dylan DeMello spoke after the game as well, and he was out there quite a bit. Out there for the couple long shifts last night, and also sort of started a play after getting whacked with a unfortunate clear right in front of the Winnipeg Jets net that ended up going in. Here's what number 2 had to say about last night's loss in Boston.
It was a tight game. I mean, shots were like 22-20 or something like that. And, two good teams going at it. I thought they did a really good job of staying above us, making it hard on us. They knocked a ton of pucks down. Pucks out of midair, pucks on the forecheck. We weren't as clean as I think we'd like to be all over the ice. And I think there was a lot of time spent in our D zone because of it, especially the first 2 periods. I thought the third period we got skating a little bit more. We were a little more assertive. We were, getting the puck out and making some smarter plays and some stronger plays, and then we had some good looks there in the third. Unfortunately, couldn't get one, but I thought Boston played a really strong game tonight, and they did a really good job getting the win.
Del Mello makes a great point, and a lot of those things that he credited Boston with doing have been things that the Jets have been so good with this year. I mean, the level of play when it comes with the sticks for Winnipeg this season, as opposed to years past, has taken a huge jump in improvement. And a big part of that, I mean, Velarde's got a great stick. Iafallo has a phenomenal stick as far as just disrupting. But it was the Boston Bruins did a lot of the disrupting. And the other thing they did was end the streak, which I know was a bummer for a lot of fans. DeMello spoke about the streak being broken last night on that empty netter.
Empty netter, so is there an asterisk on it? I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about it. But it was a great streak. It's time to get it going again. So we got a lot to learn from a game like this going forward. So we get some rest and another big game in Toronto.
All right, so there is Dylan DeMello. We'll do a regular why not question of the day. But I'll put this out to folks, and just before I say anything on it, why not question of the day for not Autocorp but Waverly and McGillivray? What did everybody think of the panel on Sportsnet last night? Remo, I know you had some takes on the broadcast overall, including Gary Galley, for some reason saying that Ehlers was basically got a freebie call and was exaggerating. Ehlers has been justifiably criticized of that in the past. I didn't think that was the case last night.
Yeah, whenever there's a Sportsnet game, I think people, they don't like the unfamiliarity. I mean, you get so used to Dan and Kevin and Dennis and Shane or whoever joined him, Kevin as well. And going into a Sportsnet game, this is a team that doesn't really follow the Jets as closely because it's a national broadcast, and it's done in Canada. You'd expect them to have some, I don't want to say favoritism, but when you hear something like a player on the Jets deserves to get slashed in the face, or Hampus Lindholm takes what I thought was a clear cross-checking penalty against Ehlers, shoving him in the back towards the boards, which to me is an unsafe play, and Gary Galley's like, yeah, that shouldn't be a penalty. It just seemed strange to me. I don't know. It just seems strange to me. And, get used to it because you're going to be seeing the intermission. You told that to me before the show. You're going to be seeing intermission. The next two games, Jets, Toronto, they are not going to mention the Jets once. If the Jets are leading, it's not going to be, what are the Jets doing well? It's going to be, what's Toronto doing poorly? So, Kyle Connor could score a hat trick, and they'll mention, the Leafs goalie, how crappy he is, or how poor their defense is, and not what a great player Kyle Connor is. So, just get used to it the next 2 days. And I have had messages from people who put on Edmonds broadcast over, but it's
hey, you can't go wrong with having Paul Edmonds do the games if you can sync it up. Like I will say this, I think enough people have noticed and paid attention to the Jets. They've had to over the last couple of months I'm not expecting what you just said. But if anyone thinks that the Jets are going to be the focal point of the broadcast, you might want to skip that one, because that will not ever be the case when the Jets are playing in Toronto against the Maple Leafs.
I mean, this is what happened in the playoffs when they played the Oilers. Like, they just showed highlights of McDavid for 15-minute intermission and didn't even mention the opponent once. So we'll see what happens, but it's just the way it is. It's like the Raptors getting the afternoon playoff time slot in basketball playoffs, or Houston getting the 3:00 Saturday time. I mean, when Ottawa, plays Toronto, the Sens fans, I see the same comments from them. That's just kind of the way it is, but it doesn't mean you can't sit here and be frustrated when you have to watch the game. Like, you're so used to such a great broadcast that TSN puts together, and it's a bit of a change, and it's pretty noticeable, I think, by everyone.
Some great comments. I knew that would fire people up for the why not question of the day. Key says, quote, "I'm not calling it a flop," proceeds to instantly call it a flop in different words. And then plenty of frustration with that group. I will say the panel was absolutely bizarre. I mean, that was bizarro world in between periods last night. And listen, I love Anson Carter. I think he did a pretty good job. Luke Gadzik is not bad. I mean, he kind of has his spot, and he has some interesting takes. Justin Williams, and I guess they're just, like, to me, my read of the situation was that they're bringing in Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7, obviously had a great career, very well-respected guy, and seeing if he works in this situation, giving him a few reps. So for the 6-hour shift with no Leafs, they brought in a guy like that to give him an opportunity. Dude, he was all over the place. And I have a feeling that the producers were in his ear at times, like giving him tips, how to say things, because they would ask him a question, and it was clear like he wasn't listening at all to what the question was asked, and then would talk about something entirely different. It was quite bizarre. He basically dismissed the Canucks later on in between periods of the Vancouver game, and didn't make many fans out on the West Coast right now. So it was definitely bizarre last night on the broadcast. And the Jets won. No one would probably be talking about it, but I did see quite a bit of discourse. And it was sort of funny to mention, at least, especially guys like that probably have not seen the Jets at all, and in their undermanned state in a game like that, certainly didn't come across too impressed.
I'm a big Justin Williams guy. Mr. Game 7, awesome as a player, but I guess, they have had a lot of turnover with the panel. They are trying out some new guys, Luke Gazdic, who, when I think of his name, I think of Dustin Byfuglien running him over. I mean, he's trying to, these guys are trying to get into the broadcast business, so the panel has come up a lot here when the Jets have their national games. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again, when they play the Leafs for 2. So there was a lot of commentary on social media, especially when, they say what Dylan DeMello embellished that slash when, maybe he did a little, like he's walking around like this, like he's trying to get a call, but I think he was pretty clearly hurt by it before the goal by Marchand.
Yeah, well, it happened. Then next thing you know, the puck is being put out in front of the net, and I think that might have added to the call that happened shortly thereafterwards, because I think the refs noticed that they probably missed one, and you're more likely to get a makeup call when it ends up in the back of your net, which is exactly what happened last night. just quickly, because we're going to talk about this with Carlo Colaiacovo coming up, and then Mike McIntyre is going to jump on with us. The Kings did lose last night again, this time to the San Jose Sharks in extra time. And Remo, more and more, we're hearing the trials and tribulations of PLD being noticed by national media. I had to chuckle a little bit when I saw this tweet from John Buccigross. Well, first of all, it was a quote tweet of Russell Morgan, who asked Todd McClellan, Kings head coach, on what he's seeing from P.L. Dubois without the puck. The quote was, "At the end of the day, whether PL gets 4 minutes or get 24 minutes, he has to be a difference maker. And with or without the puck, we've gone through this long enough. It's time." Patience is wearing out on PLD from the head coach. And then Buccigross from ESPN coming over the top with a quote tweet says, "Dubois has been a big disappointment in LA. Not a big surprise, really." Dubois is feeling it in the local market, but now also taking some shots from people far, far away from sunny California.
You look at the way that he's played this year, a lot of Kings fans I see, you and I are searching Dubois on Twitter trying to get some insight on this. They're saying he's not putting in an effort. He's not skating hard. And there's Todd McClellan saying he has to be a difference maker, pulling in if he gets 4 minutes or 24. I mean, he played a bit on the top line with Kopitar and Kempe. He's played on the fourth line. And you look at the numbers there, 19 points in 44 games. He does have his, 30 penalty minutes. He's known to take a penalty or two. And it kind of reminds me of, when he first came to Winnipeg. And you're like, is he injured? Like, what's going on here? Does he just take extra time to adjust to a situation? He had the excuse of sitting at home for 2 weeks eating Italian food, a couple of years ago. As I think today is actually the anniversary of the Dubois Laine trade. But it's fascinating what's going on, how well it's worked out for the Jets, how well Velarde, Iafallo, and Kupari have fit in here, and Dubois gets this long retirement contract that he's looking forward to and hasn't really held up his part of the bargain in terms of being a difference maker.
Speaking of that search for PLD, like the fourth thing that came up is a tweet just from the last 15 minutes from presumably a fan. It just said, just in case anyone was curious what a PLD buyout looks like. This isn't terrible with the exception of years 4 to 6. Can you imagine the fact that people are bringing up what a buyout would look like of an 8-year contract, 45 games into it? Listen, it is somewhat of a sideshow for us to look at from afar, but he's far too good of a player to be mired in this. And I know we made jokes, he can just go there and be himself. Well, being himself right now isn't working for the Los Angeles Kings. He's a team worst -13. I don't want to spend too much time on plus minus, but there's only like a couple other guys that are even -1 or -2, and then there's PLD. 19 points in 44 games, only 2 points on the power play. He's been on there all year long, and seeing the ice time diminishing. Hard for us in Winnipeg not to pay attention to what's happening there. First of all, because a big-time team in the Western Conference is going into the tank right now, and a former Winnipeg Jet that spent so much time trying to get out of here is not seemingly fitting in well, or at least right from the get-go with this new team that gave up so much for him and invested so much for him for that long-term contract.
Yeah, the Kings 2-4-4 in their last 10, while everyone ahead of them is surging. Vancouver's 8-1-1, Edmonton 10-0-0, Vegas. They've been battling injuries, and they got ripped by their coach, Bruce Cassidy, yesterday in their overtime loss to New Jersey. But the Kings are certainly slipping, and this is a guy they traded a lot for. And don't forget Montreal's second-round pick they traded as well. And he's not producing, and questions are starting to be asked. And we also have a really soft spot. Like, we care about PL, us, because he brought us so many views during the last 2 years. He did a lot. I don't think we would get to 10K subs if it weren't for PL. So, you know what? We want to see him have success while also being true to himself. So, wishing him all the best. Hopefully he can get it turned around, but that's going to be up to him to decide if he wants to do that.
Well, and you know, it's funny. I mean, I could have done another why not question of the day for Not All Corp on the Laine Dubois trade, which you're right. This was today in 2021 that deal went down. And just seeing someone put this out. I mean, now with Dubois going to LA and what the Jets got in return, it was a little rocky there in between. We don't know the unfortunate turn that Laine's career has taken with Columbus, but pretty clear that the Jets have come out big time in the long run from that trade. And now when you add in the Los Angeles Kings, I'm not sure who's worse off right now, the Blue Jackets or the Kings when it came to the trade, but certainly Chevy and the Winnipeg Jets pretty happy about what they've got. Now, as we mentioned, Jets are heading in. It's all systems go for the Leafs. Rio, just before we get to Carlo, let's quickly get this update on Scheifele from Mitchell Clinton today. Sounds like it was very optional skate today for the Winnipeg Jets, but Mark Scheifele was out there on the ice in a regular jersey. I really do think that he's going to do everything he can to play in this game tomorrow, and maybe that was why they were cautious for the last couple days. I talked to Ken, and I know Ken had put out that he expects that we won't see Scheifele until after the player break, but I have a feeling him skating today is probably a push by a player that really wants to play in front of hometown friends and family with a lot of bright lights on the guys tomorrow night in downtown Toronto.
Yeah, we saw in that video a couple years ago, Huss, how excited the Jets were to beat the Leafs. And Mark Scheifele, as you said, what?
I said, of course, yes. I was just remembering.
Remember that one?
Stand, yeah.
Remember that one? I mean, it was awesome. Like, you got fired up. It's 2 games on national TV. So every Leafs reporter that I follow is going to be tweeting about the Jets for like the first time all season, although they have actually started to notice them, back in December. But here's the tweet from Ken, as you mentioned. Lately attended optional skate here in Toronto. Scheifele and Balharry, both in regular jerseys. Important to note, it's not a full practice, but we'll see what Bonus says. And Bonus says Scheifele remains day-to-day, despite being out of the non-contact jersey. Gabriel Balharry looked like he was moving better. Bonus, we'll see how he feels tomorrow. Laurent Brossoit will start in goal versus the Maple Leafs, which Ken indicated in his column in the Free Press or post-game report article. I don't know the terms. And then Mitchell Clinton, I enjoyed. He's like, okay, so they're both day-to-day, so let's do it again tomorrow. So tune in to Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter.
Place.
Same time to see the updates on what happened. So nothing is clear at this point.
No doubt about it. All right. Well, hey, listen, let's get to Carlo Colaiacovo. Mike McIntyre is going to join us a little later on. We'll talk about the decision to go with Brossoit in game 1 of the back-to-backs against the Toronto Maple Leafs and much more. But hey, keep your eyes peeled for information here on Winnipeg Sports Talk about the upcoming Winnipeg Whiskey Festival and a special event we're going to be involved in at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. Looking forward to that. Of course, Canadian Club, proud sponsors of the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival and Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. Available for you right now at your local Manitoba liquor marts. All the favorites, the original CC, the 100% rye, the CC Classic 12-year-old, and still a few bottles left of the Canadian Club Invitation Series. Exclusive 15-year-old sherry cask, the signature 12-year-old finished with the secondary aging in Oloroso sherry casks. All the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. And pick it up at Manitoba Liquor Marts, and remember, always enjoy responsibly. I got a visit with my pal Cordell at Modern Man a little bit later on today. Time for some a little bit of helmet reduction, if you will. Guys, if you want to look good into the new year, there's a Modern Man near you. 8 locations in Winnipeg, including the newest locations on either Pembina Highway or Plessis Road. Modern Man barbershops offer a variety of grooming services, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. You can book your look via modernmanbarber.com or give them a follow on Instagram over at Modern Man Barbershops. And hey, big news coming up for our friends at Manitoba Battery next month. The leaders in batteries in Winnipeg are opening a second location on Dover Court in the south end of the city. So we'll fill you in on grand opening specials and sales to kick off the second location in Manitoba Battery. But right now, as people need batteries to make sure they get through this winter, shop local and get the best prices in town. As one of our emailers yesterday told us, they popped by Manitoba Battery, check prices out, Canadian Tire, Amazon, beating the pants off the big box stores with the best prices in town. And better yet, they'll deliver it to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg. For free. So, hey, listen, for all your battery needs right now, they're at 1026 Logan Avenue. Order online, manitobabattery.com, or give them a phone call, 204-783-8787. And, hey, don't forget, there still are, I believe, a few tickets available if you can find one to get in the building for Saturday night. Going to be a crazy atmosphere. We can't wait to see all the WSTers before the game. And in section 316 for Jets Leafs, we can definitely tell you that some more great games coming on the other end of the player break, including that Saturday night game against Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins, Valentine's Day against the San Jose Sharks, and the much-awaited rematch between the Winnipeg Jets and Minnesota Wild on February 20th. And don't forget, still great opportunities to get back into season tickets or a ticket package right now and secure your playoff tickets for the upcoming spring. It's all at winnipegjets.com/tickets. And go to the website for more information on season tickets and getting in touch with someone to do that as well. All right, Mike McIntyre's coming up in a bit. But first off, let's welcome in, as we get ready for Jets Leafs, Carlo Colaiacovo from TSN's First Up.
Carlo, what's up, man? It's great to have you back on the program.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Good to be back.
Listen, I don't mean to go there right off the bat because I know we're going to be spending quite a bit of time talking about the Jets and the Leafs, but I know you are a hardcore card-carrying member of the Bills Mafia. How are you a couple days later? What's the takeaway from the heartbreak at in Orchard Park on Sunday?
Yeah, it hurts. It definitely hurts. It's another year and another painful feeling with the painful outcome. I don't think it hurts as much as when, we lost with 13 seconds left after having the lead and getting a chance to beat KC. But, there's just a lot of reflection. It was, very frustrating, following this team this year because of the expectation put on the group. But, you go back to the first game of the season where actually even go back to last year when they lost to Cincinnati, there was a lot that came to the forefront after that game about the flaws of this team. You saw the dysfunction between Allen and Diggs and some of the stuff that carried into the offseason. And, first game of the season, a lot of those questions that you had started to, resurface. And, they lose a game that they should have won against the Jets on the opening night, Monday night, with no Aaron Rodgers. And that kind of set the tone for the season of what this team was going to be and, what type of struggles they were going to go through. They get to 6-6 and, they play better football. They finish incredibly and battle tested and go through a lot of adversity to win the division. And you just thought when they got to that point, it would be such an uplifting feeling that nothing could get in this team way. But, they played a good game against Pittsburgh, but not a dominant game against Pittsburgh. And yeah, maybe weather played a factor with the elements, but going into KC, a lot of people had pegged then that this is their year. They got the, they got the advantage now. It's a home game. They shouldn't lose this. It's 2 games that they've lost. They got to learn their lesson of how to beat Mahomes. And, you watch the game, and I thought it was a really good game for 3 quarters. And in the 4th quarter, you saw the things that hurt this team all year. It was the self-inflicted mistakes. I mean, 4th and 5, and you run DeMar Hamlin with your fake, a guy that's played 12 snaps all season to get you 5 yards. Then you get a lucky break because they turn the ball over in the end zone. Your first possession after that is 3-0. And then, you get 7 minutes left on the clock. You get the ball back. You create a long drive to get in scoring position in field goal range. But then when they come out of the 2-minute warning timeout, it's 2nd and 9, and they throw 2 balls to the end zone. Why not try to get the first down and extend the drive and try to win that game instead of just, playing safe? And I guess in summary, what I'm getting at is the Buffalo Bills were the best team all season at beating themselves, and they beat themselves again in a pivotal game where it was supposed to be their time.
As a kid growing up here in Winnipeg during the Gretzky era, being in the division, of the Oilers, and knowing that no matter how great the team was here in the Peg, we had to go through Gretzky. It does feel like this Bills team and this era of Bills football probably deserves a bit better of a fate. Unfortunately, Mahomes is that transcendent player that just seems to
but
do what he does.
I look at it like Burrow found a way to beat him, right? Tom Brady found a way to beat him. Lamar Jackson could potentially find a way to beat him. Like how much longer are we going to continue to make excuses here for the Bills and Josh Allen? Like Josh Allen played great. I don't think there's much more he could have done, but when he was asked to make a bigger play in a big moment, he just wasn't capable of doing it. And that's just been, the same thing with Sean McDermott. I have my own feelings of Sean McDermott. I've heard amazing things about the person that he is, and I won't take that away from him. But year after year, when you have to count on him to make a big decision in a big game, he continues to fail making that. And it's just, you start to wonder, is this the guy? Okay, he came in and changed the culture, but can he come in and actually get you over the hump and get you to win a big game? And, there's been a lot of comparisons to Dwayne Casey here in Toronto, where, again, he came into Toronto, he changed the culture, he built this team up to be a great team, but they could never get over that playoff hump. They bring in somebody new and they get over it. So is that what the Bills need? Look, they need a lot more. They're in cap hell next year. They have a lot of big roster decisions to make, and it's curious to see if that window that they had right now to be as competitive as they are is closing.
No, it is it's fascinating. And listen, you feel, even as a Chiefs guy, you feel for the fans, because that city supports their team so well. Yeah. And they do deserve a better fate in a lot of cases. Carlo Colaiacovo is with us. Let's get to the main reason why we got together this week. A little home and home between the Winnipeg Jets and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Jets had a number of streaks snapped last night in Boston, and we'll see as to how Mark Scheifele and Gabriel Velarde are feeling heading into the game on Wednesday night in TO. But just before we talk about this matchup, Carlo, you're doing tons of NHL analyst work on TSN. What are your thoughts about the Winnipeg Jets, who are still right there near the top of the league as we get well into the second half of the season?
You know what? My thoughts are with raring results. I love this team. The last 2 months, what I've seen this team do and how I've seen them play, I've even done a couple of games. I am so impressed with the brand of hockey that they're playing, because it's the brand of hockey you can see have success in the playoffs. They don't give you much offensively. They play a very detailed game. They play a very structured game. They play a very patient game, and they wear on you. That third line of Lowry, Niederreiter, and Appleton is hands down one of the most impressive bottom six lines in the league. And not just because of what they can do to you in a matchup defensively, but the offense that you can get from these guys too. And, you look at some of the successes of the teams. Yes, teams have elite players. Teams have star players. But when those star players don't show up, are they getting enough from the rest of their roster? And I look at this Winnipeg Jets team, and I don't even need to say that about them, because I wouldn't put any of their players in the elite category unless you're talking about Connor Hellebuck, but they have enough players around the top players in this lineup that you can count on to get the job done, not just offensively, but to get the job done defensively when you need a big play to be made. And I think because of that, it's almost a contagious feeling that when you see everybody in the lineup playing the same way, it builds confidence, and a confidence that the Winnipeg Jets have had over the last 2 months, where they know they can beat anybody because they don't give the other team much. That record that was ended yesterday, you know how impressive that is? 35 straight games in an era of hockey where all we want to see is more offense, where they don't give up 3 or more goals. And I love DeMello's comment after the game that should be an asterisk because of the empty netter. But that is so much to stand on, for a team like the Winnipeg Jets, knowing that, they probably won't compete with the best teams in the league offensively, but they make it hard on you to try to get anything against them. And there's a reason why, they are as good as they are. Defensively, they're sound. They play a very simple, detailed game. They get great goaltending no matter who's in net. And to think this was supposed to be a year with so much unpredictability with this team, with the potential of no Hellebuck, no Scheifele, you trade Dubois, people wonder, where would this team go? Well, sometimes, the best moves you make are the ones you don't make. And for the Winnipeg Jets, keeping Scheifele, keeping Hellebuck, and then, getting extreme value for Dubois that helped round out the rest of this roster has reaped benefits for this team. And I absolutely love them. I think, I've been saying it for over a month. Stop sleeping on the Jets because this team is for real. They can play with anybody.
You mentioned the streak of 3 goals or less. I think maybe even more impressive, Carlo. And this was broken last night too. But 22 straight games of 2 goals or less in regulation. They gave up a third goal, a power play goal against the Habs in December. You had to go all the way back to November 30th before 3 went in the net in regulation. And even in that game, it was an empty netter. From a player's standpoint, when you are a team that's obviously maybe greater than the sum of its parts, how would you describe the momentum that a team gets on with their consistency and like a foundation of great 5-on-5 play, which is what the Jets have, because they certainly haven't been leaning on their special teams as much. I mean, how hard is it to get to that point, but how effective can that be playing against teams that, as you mentioned, might have some more high-end, super high-skilled players, but at the end of the day, it comes down to being a team game every night.
Yeah, and look, in the NHL, it's clear that talent, oversees everything, right? But when you're talking about winning, it's the teams that buy into playing a team game, because it is, you talk about 7-game series. It's not always the teams with the best players that advance the furthest. It's always the teams that play like a team and understand the differences between winning and losing can do for you. And I think for Winnipeg, winning is the ultimate cure to all problems. And when you're playing this way that they're playing, but you're getting the results, it helps you feel more confident about yourself. And I think that's what's helped this whole process with the Winnipeg Jets, because I think the players on that team would probably admit too, to start this season, nobody really knew what type this season was going to be. But because they kept finding ways to get wins, it just instills a belief in the team that maybe they didn't think they had, but now they know they can play with because they're getting the results. So winning is the ultimate cure to all your problems. And in a league where there's so much parity too. I mean, you look at the Eastern Conference standings, the cluster of teams that could potentially be in a playoff spot, out of a playoff spot on a nightly basis, that just goes to show, how much more credit a team like Winnipeg should get, because they've been able to sustain it consistently, doing it with some big guys, big name players out of the lineup. I mean, you've missed Scheifele for a couple games, you've missed Carr for a couple games. They've had some injuries on the back end. Guys have been in and out. That they've had a nice plug and play system where the next guy up has been able to fill a role quite nicely.
Yeah, and Bones talked about that yesterday. I mean, that they really haven't had the extended injury to Balharry, and then which just sort of overlapped. I mean, played a couple games, and then Kyle Connor was out for a long time. Would like to see all those guys get back together, and we'll have fingers crossed that Scheifele's able to play. It's always a big game for Ontario guys to play in Toronto. Well, what about the Leafs? I mean, as we go into tonight's action, they are in a playoff spot, a shockingly low number of regulation wins. And it seems that, with all a lot of people were firing Sheldon Keefe last week. I mean, what is this team 45 games in right now, Carlo? And should people be bullish about the future or really concerned that this team hasn't been better so far this season?
Well, I think they're they're a slightly above average team, and anybody who sees otherwise probably doesn't have a good understanding of this team. They're a team with very good players. They outscore a lot of their problems, but you can only get away with that for so long. I mean, for the early parts of the season, they had to deal with injuries in the back end, injuries in net. And luckily, it's been their top guys that have been able to carry the load and lead the way. I mean, on most nights, they need 4 or 5 goals to win a hockey game. And that's why you're not seeing many regulation wins. And, I was very confused about the construction of the roster in the offseason, because, you lose guys like Justin Hall, you lose guys like Luke Shen that played important roles for this team, Hall in the regular season and Luke Shen, especially in the playoffs. And you replace him with an offensive guy that is worse defensively in John Klingberg. That was your big addition on the blue line. And so they didn't really fill any holes. If anything, they created more. And to go into the season and believe that that type of defense would allow you to have the success that you envisioned with this group was probably a poor evaluation. And then they know that, they recognize that, they're trying to change it, but clearly they're not getting any help changing it, because either the market hasn't been established of who's available, or they just don't have the depth internally. Now, what they did find out about their group is guys like Simon Benoit, guys like Lagesson, and even guys like Connor Timmins, who have been getting extended playing time. They are good depth defensemen, but when you look at this defense, I look at it and I see one really good defenseman. That's Morgan Rielly. And that's sort of what's hurt this team in getting over the hump, because their top six is as good as any top six in the league, if not one of the best top six in the league. They can score. They're dangerous. They're a team that can, come back in games, through 2-3 goal deficits. They even did it in a 5-goal deficit in one period against Columbus. But the problem with this team, compared to, how much I praise the Jets, is that they have holes. They don't play a committed team defensively game. Their mistakes in holding leads, in protecting leads late in games, catch up to them, because they're just not that talented on the back end. And they've had patchwork goaltender, and people talk in this market where they would be without Martin Jones, and that's a fair question, because he's come in as a third guy and given them some unbelievable games, and obviously giving them a great chance to win those games. So that's the problem with this team, is they're so top heavy. They don't have a well enough rounded roster. Guys like Bertuzzi and Domi were supposed to come in and bring something different to this group. And I think they have, on a small sample size, but not enough on a bigger scale. So I think the fact that those guys haven't met the level of expectation or production has held this team back a bit. I think they're going to be a team that scrapes to get a playoff spot unless they make some significant upgrades under their back end.
Well, and it's easier said than done, because they've got about $75 of cap space right now, and it's money in, money out. And speaking of that, what's going on with Ryan Reeves?
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys have talked about this on the show over the last couple of days. I mean, on the weekend he said, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm good to go." I mean, is this just a power play to force him to be activated again? And is there a spot for Reeves going forward in the lineup? I know they signed him to a 3-year deal, but it doesn't seem like they've been any rush to get the big guy back in.
Yeah, Andrew, only in Toronto do people love to spend a lot of time and energy on a player that's slotted in as the 12th forward on this team. I've never had a problem with the Reeves signing, because you know what you're going to get with him. And there's a lot of people that have spent a lot of time and energy saying, "Oh, it was a terrible signing. We didn't need him. Why'd you give him a 3-year deal?" Look, that was the cost of bringing in a guy like that. And you got to understand why you bring him in. He's going to bring an element that this team has desperately needed physically, even just with the personality that he is. It's uplifting. Nobody was complaining about that in the first 2 weeks of the season, when you saw the impact he was having, being physical and fighting guys, and obviously being a very vocal guy in the room. So those are the positives. I think what happened to Ryan Reeves was obviously an injury. An injury happened with him that allowed this team to get used to life without him, and it's cost him his job. And it's unfortunate, but that's the business of hockey. He's got to just sit there and wait his time. I know believe me, I've been in that spot too. It's not an easy thing to accept. It's not an easy thing to digest either. But with his absence, they'd had other guys step up and play more significant roles, or at least contribute in a more significant role that he was providing for this team, where, it allowed Sheldon Keefe to roll 4 lines evenly instead of when he was in the lineup. Sheldon Keefe didn't trust him to be out there in certain minutes because of the stat that was around saying, oh, he's been on the ice for this many goals and stuff like that. Ultimately, I think that was more of a team problem than an individual problem. So I don't really know what the answer is for Ryan Reeves. I think, my advice to him would just be, to stay patient. He being a good team guy. There's still a lot of hockey left to be played. He's probably going to get in another game or two. But don't be a distraction, right? Don't be a guy that's constantly, sending, quotes into the media that's going to create something that the coaches don't want to have a conversation about. And I'm not saying that he is that guy, but in this market, those are things that can obviously be escalated. And that's something that he doesn't really need right now. He's a guy that's been out of the lineup. It's an unfortunate fate that he has to accept, and until the coaches believe otherwise, to get it back in. Right now, there's other guys that bring more of this team that he was bringing, and that's why the coaches decided to stick with this lineup.
Carlo Colaiacovo of TSN, and first up with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk, getting ready for back-to-back games between the Winnipeg Jets and Toronto Maple Leafs. Wednesday night in TO, Saturday night back here in Winnipeg, heading into the player break. So, Carlo, when you look at these next 2 games, what intrigues you about this matchup, and what do you sort of expect to see from both teams, considering the nature of you're only going to do it once, twice in a season. It's in the same week, not to mention going into the player break and All-Star festivities afterwards.
Well, I'll start from a Leaf perspective. I'm intrigued to watch a team that I think a lot of the Leaf fans want the Maple Leafs to be, right? A 4-line team, good defensively, have great goaltending that gives you a chance to win every night. But not just that, a team that plays a heavy brand of hockey. They wear you down, they get in your face. And who's kidding who? Look at the last time these two teams have played. You would think that there was a rivalry between this group because of how spirited these matchups ended up being. So I don't expect there to be that much of a change in these next 2 matches, especially when you're playing on a back-to-back. And maybe this is a game in a series where you do bring back Ryan Reeves just because of a game you do expect to play against Winnipeg. But on the Leafs perspective, they're coming off of a really long Western road trip, and I never really feel good when teams come back off of those games because it takes a little bit of an adjustment to get back and feel like yourself again. And they're going to it's a good test for them, right? I know they played a really good defensive game in Seattle, and maybe that's something they want to build off of. And, what Winnipeg really tests when they play you is they test your patience. Can you stick to playing a patient game where you're focusing on the simple plays? Because if you don't, they can make you pay. They'll force you to turn the puck over, and, they're very opportunistic. On Winnipeg's side, I think they're coming off one of their most lopsided losses in a long time. So
there haven't been many.
Yeah, you've probably got a pissed off group that's looking to rebound, and it's looking at Toronto as, a game that's going to get a lot of attention, and they want to, have a bounce back game. So I think it's a good test for both teams, and ultimately what I hope to see is just a great hockey game.
We're going to see 2 of the best in the National Hockey League. Of course, Connor Hellebuck when it comes to goaltending. But I just have to ask you about the season that Austin Matthews is having. You can't lay any Leaf struggles on 34 right now. No. He is, every single night it seems like he's lighting the lamp. Just how special of a campaign has this been for Austin?
And it's been extremely special. I honestly think people in Toronto here sometimes take that for granted because of how critical they want to be between wins and losses. And the thing I just try to remind people is Toronto's lucky to have one of the best players, one of the best evolved goal scorers in the game in Austin Matthews play for their team, and watch him play on a nightly basis, because to see what he's able to do and the impact he can have on every game just by almost scoring every game, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. And then when you complement that with guys like Marner and Nylander, and Tavares has been on the struggle bus lately, points pointless in his last 8 games, something that we haven't really seen him do throughout his tenure here. You know, you got to appreciate it. And I know it comes with criticism because it's a team that can't get the results at the most important time of the year. And yeah, maybe they change that a little bit next year. People are always looking forward to April with this group, but you know, you can't get to April without, you know, being as good as they are in the regular season. And I think we take that for granted here a little bit. And, you know, and it'll be fun to watch him, you know, try to beat Connor Hellebuck, the guy that's been literally probably the leading candidate right now for the Vezina Trophy winner because of the year that he's had. So, you know, I wish the NHL would find a way to get him on more national TV games, you know, so the rest of the hockey world can watch him. But it's clearly a treat. And, you know, the expectation that's put on him every year because of the pace that he scores at, you know, 50, 60 goals. I always thought it was an unfair one because it's hard to score 50 goals in a season. And when you're expected to do that before the puck, the drops before the first game, it could put a lot of pressure on the guy. But this guy just doesn't seem to bother him. He finds himself at the right place at the right time, and I think he's lucky enough to play with the players that he plays with that puts him in those spots.
Well, I mean, he seemingly put the team on his back last week in Calgary when the world was crumbling around the Leafs. And anyways, things have settled down a little bit, but I imagine it'll be a pretty great atmosphere in both buildings for these games on Wednesday and Saturday. Carlo, great to have you on the program. Can't wait for these games. Say hi to our pal AK and keep up the great work in the early morning. Shout out to you guys for getting up every day. That's a grind, that schedule.
It is. But we do our best, and you know, as long as we can continue to wake up and know that it's a job we do for fun, it keeps us going. So
no, well, we should have a lot of fun this week with these 2 games between the Jets and Maple Leafs. All the best, Carlo. Thanks again for popping by.
Thanks, buddy. Anytime. Good luck to your Jets.
All right, great stuff with Carlo, and we'll have much more on Jets Leafs over the course of the next 3 days here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Game 1 in Toronto tomorrow night, and then Saturday back in the Peg Canada Life Center. Jets' final game before the player break and the All-Star break coming up on Saturday night. In the meantime, the Bombers, of course, Jeff Hamilton broke this story yesterday in the Winnipeg Free Press. The announcement is being made official as we speak. The Bombers announcing that their home field is now Princess Auto Stadium. It was great having Jeff on to kind of drop that news just as it broke yesterday. Of course, Princess Auto, great sponsors of ours, and so much in Winnipeg. This huge commitment to the Bombers, the Jets, the Winnipeg Goldeyes. Aaron Cockrell, who had that great performance in Dubai on the weekend. Aaron's going to join us next week on the program. I'm looking forward to that. But of course, Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Proudly Manitoban, proudly Winnipeg, and now a huge part of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers moving forward. We have to thank our friends at Wallace & Wallace for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk, the fencing and overhead door specialists in town, doing it locally since 1946. And while the fencing part of the business really ramps up as the snow melts, right now they're taking care of a lot of overhead garage doors in town because, of course, right now, this part of winter is when your overhead garage door works the hardest. The right time to prevent downtime this winter is right now. Give Wallace & Wallace a call to book your inspection and maintenance service. Call today for residential and commercial overhead door sales and service. There's only one name or two you need to know, and that is Wallace & Wallace. And I'm also going to be heading down to F Apparel very quickly. New year, got to maybe add to the menswear selection. It's kind of nice working from where we do it and not having a dress code on WST, but there is times where you got to step it up, fellas. And if you're in that category, you need to get down to F Apparel, 190 Smith Street. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories you won't find anywhere else. If 2024 includes a wedding for you or you're in a wedding party, make sure you get the gang to talk to Andrew, Alex, and their staff about a 15% discount for the entire wedding party when you get your suits at F Apparel. Find out more online or make an appointment at F, that's EPHapparel.com, or pop down and see him at 190 Smith Street. All right, let's welcome in our pal Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. And, big news for the Bombers, Mike. I mean, it kind of just become second nature to refer to the homes, as the companies. But this Princess Auto is really neat. A local business that started here, that is now Canada-wide, that still has their headquarters here. And from all accounts, I mean, the most significant corporate sponsorship in the history of the club. Good news for Wade Miller on the business side keeps on coming.
Indeed, Huss. I was thinking before we came on here, I think you used to call MTS Center, you called it like the phone booth. There's been lots of nicknames. I'm trying to think what might work, given how much the Bombers have sort of owned the teams that come in to play them in their own stadium. Maybe something like the impound lot, or I'm sure we can do a lot better than that. I'm sure the fine listeners and viewers of Winnipeg Sports Talk will probably not take very long to come up with a great name. By the way, shout out to F Apparel. Huss, you are the master of bringing deals together, of hustling. I wonder if you could use your connections with the Kansas City Chiefs. You know who could use the perfect shirt and maybe a clothing deal? I'm thinking of one, Jason Kelce, right?
What a scene that was in Buffalo. And
amazing.
I mean the collaboration, the connection of my favorite team, the Chiefs, playing the biggest game of the year up until that point, divisional playoffs. First time Mahomes had ever been on the road. Taylor Swift in the box, commanding all the attention of the entire world. Jason Kelce stealing the show. And every time you looked over at those pictures, like, wait a second, is that Zach Collaros in the box? Lo and behold, the connection came even closer to Winnipeg, with Zach getting a pretty prime seat that I'm sure was envied by millions of people, whether it was for the football game or for the company.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard of 6 Degrees of Kevin Spacey and that game, right, of how everyone's connected in some way. Maybe we need to call it 6 Degrees of Zach Collaros, because there he is. Right, he kept his shirt on as Jason Kelce was just pounding them back.
I just love it. Like, this is supposed to be a shot of Brittany Mahomes and Taylor Swift after the Kelce touchdown. And all we can look at is Zach Collaros smiling in the background and just a casual shirtless Jason Kelce crushing another unexpected 12-ouncer.
That photo, right? That is art. That should be hanging in galleries across the land. There's so much to dissect out of that picture. If you're Zach Collaros, I'd be getting that blown up and framed and hung in my living room. But yeah, what a scene. Great stuff. And I wonder if Zach will be making the trip to Baltimore, Huss, to watch the championship game this weekend.
I'd love to know how it all came about, because I believe Zach does live in and around Hamilton in the off season, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where Southern Ontario. So yeah, it wasn't too far. But hey, after the fun that he had on the weekend, I'm sure he'd be down if that opportunity was available. What a game that was.
It was a great game. And if you're Zach Collaros and if you're the Bombers, you're probably planting a bug in Zach's ear saying, hey, Zach, next time you're kind of in that company, maybe let Taylor know that if she's finding herself, missing football, during the NFL offseason, because clearly, she's become a real big fan of the sport this year. If you want your fix, you don't have to wait until like September. There's some other football being played, between the end of the NFL season and the start of next NFL season. And maybe they could get her up to Winnipeg at the Princess Auto Park.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, if Princess Auto Stadium could have a fan in Taylor Swift, I guarantee you that would be big news. Hell, Travis Kelce too, for that matter. And again,
sure. Bring them all.
For people that are wondering, is Zach from KC? No, he's not. I mean, these guys were best friends and teammates at the University of Cincinnati. And there's a great story, a long read about Kelsey, that they interview a bunch of his buddies, and Zach Collaros is one of them, talking about the house that they shared back as underclassmen at Cincy with the Bobcats. And
do the Bombers have a no shirt, no shoes policy? Like, if they don't, I mean, Jason, they can welcome him with open arms. He doesn't even need to bring a shirt. And it's warm up here in the summer, right?
Listen, Tyson Ducharme and the rest of the 141 boys have been showing for a long time in the north end of the stadium that you don't need to have a shirt, and it doesn't matter what you look like. Go for it. So he'll be there. I mean, it was. Listen, that was an unbelievable weekend of football, and I mean, the finale. Obviously, I'm still in a very good mood of it. Yes. Buffalo fans, not quite as much. Although, really, I mean, I think everyone thought that maybe the Bills could be that story of the team that hasn't won, finally getting over the hump. The Detroit Lions are that team right now. And, it was funny. I saw a picture on Instagram from, I believe, Connor Hellebuck's better half, saying that she was missing out. And it was a picture of a whole bunch of people out watching the games on the weekend, I guess on the Jets off day. And Connor Hellebuck and Kyle Connor both supporting the silver and blue. Those two guys, in addition to wanting to take care of business against the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm sure very much looking forward to Sunday afternoon for their home state team, for the first time in their lifetime to be playing a game of this magnitude.
Absolutely. I believe Connor Hellebuck, I know he's going to the All-Star game, but I believe he's actually heading to Disneyland, Disney World, one of the two, for a few days with his family immediately at the start of the player break. So he might be catching Sunday's game, Huss, like maybe at the happiest place on earth. And I'm sure a Lions victory would have Connor Hellebuck pretty happy. A Jets victory on Saturday night, which is going to be Connor Hellebuck's next start, because I don't know if you heard, Laurent Brossoit is getting the call tomorrow night. Not entirely surprising. I know there'll be some people saying, why aren't they just riding Hellebuck? The Jets' schedule has really lightened up here lately. I think, again, two things. They're trying to manage Connor Hellebuck's schedule, and this is a guy who's not going to get the full break that all his teammates are getting, because he is going to the All-Star game. No, it's not going to be a strenuous few days for him, but he doesn't get the mental reset, maybe the same degree that others get. But I think almost as important is the fact that Laurent Brossoit has played really well, and the Jets want to be able to use both goaltenders. So Rick Bowness, before the Jets hit the road last week, said that Laurent Brossoit would get one of these games. I wondered if it might have been the game last night in Boston, but Connor Hellebuck has a bit of a connection to that area, and I think playing in Boston, which they only do once a year, is fairly important to him. So, Laurent Brossoit gets that start tomorrow, and Connor Hellebuck will get the big game on Saturday night, where I'm sure the downtown barn will be absolutely rocking, as it usually is when the Leafs come to town.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, and not surprising that LB is getting this start. We knew that they had said that he was going to be playing one of these games this weekend. I kind of thought that it might, or this week, I kind of thought it might have been the Ottawa or the Boston game.
Yeah.
But man, when Hellebuck played the way he played against Ottawa, I don't think it was the tough decision to throw him out there again. And to be honest, this team's played very well in front of Brossoit. I mean, you look at this last couple months, and, we're mourning the end of the streak today, Mike.
Yeah.
LB has had Hellebuckian numbers throughout that, and there's a lot of credit to him, but also the way the team played in front of it. Speaking of the end of the streak, just before we kind of focus in on what's to come, what were your takeaways from last night's loss in Boston that ended that incredible run of defensive play by Winnipeg?
Well, I'm with Dylan DeMello, and as he said to Kenny last night in Boston, is there an asterisk beside that? Because it was into an empty net. So if you're going by games of 3 or less, when a goaltender's been in the net, you could make a technical argument that the streak is intact. But at the end of the day, it's over. I think, it was a nice little story while it was going, and it actually extended probably a lot longer than anyone thought. I think for the Jets last night, Huss, you knew without Mark Scheifele and now without Gabe Vilardi, who wasn't able to go last night, that's 2/3 of your top line. The Jets were probably going to be in tough against, the team that began the night as the number 2 team in the NHL in win percentage. And I suspect a team that was looking for some payback after the Jets throttled them just before Christmas in Winnipeg. So, when Boston gets that early goal, you're like, oh boy, this is going to be a long night for the Jets. Dylan DeMello takes that shot. Vlad Namestnikov tips it, and all of a sudden it's a game again. And I thought it remained a game, Huss, like right down to the wire. To the Jets' credit, they actually carried a lot of the play in the third period. I know the final score won't reflect it. It'll show that Boston scored the only 2 goals in the third. But it was a 1-goal game, and the Jets were about to go on the power play. I guess technically they did go on the power play because Jake DeBrusk's goal does go down as a shorty. Nino Niederreiter really hadn't even barely got out of the box into the play. But there's a circumstance where if that doesn't go in, the Jets, their power play has not been good, but they had a chance to tie. And so, they hung around despite obviously being shorthanded against an elite hockey team. And, I think for the Jets, they haven't tasted defeat very often, just their 3rd regulation loss in 23 games, which is remarkable. And obviously back to work tomorrow night. It won't be easy. You always know what you're going to get, I think, from the Boston Bruins. I don't know that you could say the same about the Toronto Maple Leafs. They can look elite at times, but they can also look, something very different. But I'm sure they'll be fired up to face the Jets, and they know where Winnipeg is in the standings. It should be a good game tomorrow, and a little bit of optimism, I guess, out of practice today, as Kenny on Scene in Toronto reported. Both Scheifele and Velarde in regular sweaters. Rick Bowness wouldn't commit to either of them potentially being in the lineup tomorrow. Kind of a wait and see, but I guess a good step in the direction of both players, and the Jets no doubt would love to have those guys in the lineup.
Well, and Mike, I mean, listen, if these last 2 games going into the break were against New Jersey or the Islanders or literally any other team but the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think you'd probably I don't know what's up with Velarde. He was a game time decision, but with Scheifele, considering the lower body injury, believed to be some sort of a groin tweak, I think that there would be 0 chance that they'd play him.
Correct.
That he wants to be in that game tomorrow night. And Velarde, too, is an Ontario guy. He'll want to be in there as well.
Yep.
And I would say that they're giving him the opportunity to potentially be a player for tomorrow night. The doctors are going to have the final say on it. But if he's out there, if he's in the non-contact jersey, if he's skating and he's seemingly ready to go, the more I think about it, especially after a loss last night against Boston, I think it might be tough to keep 55 off the ice. And to be honest, that's very good because you really, really notice Mark Scheifele's absence in this lineup when he's not playing.
Well, I mean, at one point, I think they were shuffling the lines around yesterday. Like, who would have thought that the number 1 team in the NHL, and that's what the Jets were prior to last night's loss in terms of win percentage, Boston's now overtaken them. But you look at what they had up the middle, right? I mean, who would have predicted Adam Lowry, Vlad Namestnikov, and Dominic Toninato would be your top 3 centers in that order? And that's what they were running. Rasmus Kupari as your 4th center. I think coming into this year, we weren't sure about the 2C position. But obviously with Mark Scheifele now missing a few games, a guy like David Gustafsson, who I think many thought might be the 4th-line center, he's been out now closing in on a month. There's been a lot of movement up the middle. And, I wondered before the game yesterday, Huss, and obviously Velarde didn't play, but I would have liked to potentially see what Gabe Velarde up the middle might have looked like. If ever there was a time maybe to do a little experimentation, to kind of see what maybe you have in Velarde as a potential center, I thought this would have been the time, but obviously he's banged up a bit. I do wonder if at some point we do see a look at Gabe Velarde. If Mark Scheifele, let's say tomorrow Mark Scheifele's still out, but Gabe Velarde's in, why not try Gabe Velarde with Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers just to see what that looks like? And then you could keep your second line with Namestnikov and Perfetti, and Adam Lowry could remain on that shutdown line that we know he's very effective at with Nino Niederreiter. So I'll be curious to see. I'm still honestly hedging towards Mark Scheifele not playing tomorrow, because if you're the Jets, I know he would want to play. This is not the time to be taking risks. The worst thing that could happen is, you bring him back too early, and then he aggravates it to the point that it becomes something more long-term. As much as I'm sure the Jets want to win tomorrow and, have a good showing against the Leafs, it's the furthest thing from a must-win. The Jets are in a very good position with all the points they've racked up. I think you try and play it as cautious as you can be, even though the player or players in Velarde's case will probably be pushing to get in.
Well, the only thing I'll counter to that is that, Bowness did say that he was a possibility for the Ottawa game after New York Islanders last week. So, I'm not sure that they haven't maybe done their due diligence and been patient and gave him a couple extra games. And listen, if he's ready to go, he's ready to go. And
he was moving pretty good today from the video that I saw. He didn't seem to be favoring it. And the fact he was in a regular sweater suggests that they were comfortable with him taking contact. That's a great sign for sure.
Well, and listen, there's a lot of bright lights on the club right now. And a lot of people have been kind of waking up and paying attention to this hockey team over the last month or so, basically because they had to. And Shai's been such a big part of that. And he won't be in the All-Star game. He's going to get that extended break after the weekend. So I'm hopeful that he'll be in the lineup, but I do know that if he is in the lineup, it'll mean he's 100% and ready to go, because to your point, they are not going to take any undue chances with their number one center.
Can we, by the way, just for a second, can we talk about that big spotlight? I hate to dump over another media outlet, but watching the Jets game last night on Sportsnet, it's as if some of these people, and maybe they haven't watched a Jets game this year.
Legitimately, I would say that's likely.
So, everything from, at one point, I think the intro to a segment, could the Jets be buyers at the trade deadline? Well, they're not going to be sellers. Of course they could be buyers. They're the number one team in the league prior to the loss last night. What else would they be? I guess you could argue, might they stand pat? But it just seemed like the kind of question you ask about a team that's towing the line between contender and pretender. Could they be buyers? And then, Huss, what was with this suggestion? Was it Justin Williams who suggested that might they consider trading Laurent Brossoit?
Yes, it was Justin Williams, and he was on one last night.
Well, he also suggested that Dylan DeMello embellished the slash from David Pastrnak, right? And I believe he also suggested that Nikolai Ehlers, and look, Nikolai Ehlers, he does have a rep sometimes, and maybe some theatrics. That was a wicked slash that he took. There was no embellishment to that. It was a clear penalty. But why would the number so? You have Laurent Brossoit. You have arguably one of the best backups in the league. A great insurance policy should something happen to Connor Hellebuck. If you're the Jets and you're thinking we're all in this year, what in the world would possess a team to even consider getting rid of its insurance policy unless they had something like a third stringer who was absolutely knocking on the door and could step in and be just as effective? The Jets don't have that. Look at the goaltending situation on the Manitoba Moose right now. The Moose are struggling big time. Their goaltending has not been great. That would be a fireable offense. And I get the idea that, maybe some team would blow you away with an offer you couldn't refuse. Well, what's that offer going to be? A really high draft pick? A really good young prospect that could help you in a few years from now? The Jets aren't thinking, nor should they be thinking of a few years from now. They should be thinking about the here and now. And the here and now is they have a terrific 1-2 punch in net. Why would you do anything to potentially disrupt that?
It was complete insanity. And, Mike Williams, and I think that he may have been sort of I don't think he's done that very often before. That might have even been his first full time. Right. They know all the big guys are getting ready for the Leafs on the weekend. So for Monday, We'll let you guys do this 6-hour shift. I'd love Anson Carter. I think he's awesome. And Luke Gadzik has some interesting things to say as well. Williams, like they were in his ear. It was quite clear. The producers are telling him some things. And then they ask him a question and he answers an entirely different question. Like just was simply not listening to the other guys, which is important when you're doing a discussion program. But
it was not a clutch Game 7 like performance from Justin Williams.
No, it reminded me. I mean, you're out at the bar or whatever, and the Jets are on, and some guy that obviously has not watched the team at all just starts firing a bunch of takes that you realize, like, what planet you're on. Like, that's sort of what I was feeling last night. The one thing that was interesting, and this came from Gadzik, because, again, we're talking about centers, and you just hear Sean Monahan being out there. I know they would love his excellence in the faceoff circle. That's something that the Jets have really been lacking, and I know that's important to Rick Bowness. But I mean, the thought that the Habs are going to get, and this is obviously floated out by Montreal, that the Habs are going to get a first-round pick. Yeah, Freudian slip.
Love it.
That they're going to get a first-round pick for Sean Monahan. I mean, no way. Listen, that's I'm out. Like, could that guy be a depth player and come in and potentially play a role? Maybe, yeah. But I mean, the cost of that is out. Elias Lindholm is the guy that we've heard of over and over again. But Gadzik brought up Adam Henrique.
Yeah.
And Adam Henrique, like, he's 33 years old. He's got the expiring contract, which to me, this conversation is very different, Mike, than what we've had in the past as they've sort of tried to build the team. I mean, I don't think that getting guys with a big amount of term and a large cap hit actually works very well for the Winnipeg Jets. If anything, considering the younger players, contracts are going to need to be added in the next couple of years. Like, I think the Jets have a future that involves a few ELCs. So I'm not sure that they'd be keen on bringing a guy in that's going to be holding down a top 6 spot for a long time. And that's why Henrique, to me, is actually a bit of an intriguing player in that, he's certainly played in the playoffs before. He's on a languishing Ducks team right now. I think we just pulled this up. He's got 14 goals and 14 assists so far. And somehow has an even plus-minus rating on a team that looks like the leaderboard at the Amex on the weekend. So, what do you think about him? Or, I mean, players that we haven't heard. I mean, again, we've talked a lot about Monahan and Lindholm because they're UFAs, Canadian teams. They get mentioned quite a bit. But, I mean, I think we agree that center position is a place that they just could really use an upgrade. And it's there in spades when Mark Scheifele's not in the lineup.
For sure. And I think that's what maybe this last little stretch has shown to Kevin Cheveldayoff and company. Like, this is no knock at all against Vlad Nemestikov. I think we would all agree Vlad Nemestikov has been a revelation. He's done a more than capable job of kind of holding down that spot for really long stretches of this season. But again, Mark Scheifele gets hurt, and all of a sudden now, you're moving Adam Lowry to out of what I would say is his position of strength. And Adam Lowry has done a very nice job playing up in the lineup, but I think you're also weakening yourself when it comes to maybe that shutdown role that you like to have Lowry out in. And then again, a guy like Dominic Toninato really has stepped up here and had a nice showing. I just think, though, that the Jets have been exposed a little bit with Mark Scheifele being out. And there was certainly a debate that that's a position of need, even when Mark Scheifele is completely healthy. That's why I go back to the idea of at least looking at Gabe Vilardi there just to see what that looks like. Because what if Gabe Vilardi just makes a seamless, smooth, effective transition, and then maybe Scheifele and Vilardi are your top 2 centers. If that, now I get that they maybe want to keep Connor and Vilardi and Scheifele together. But to me, between now and the trade deadline, March 8th, I wouldn't mind seeing what Gabe Vilardi looks like there, just to see if maybe you've got a bit of a solution or at least a stopgap in-house beyond what you already have.
Either way, I say it's a good thing to try out just to see how things work, get him, because circumstances might dictate that you have to go that way
sure.
at some point this season. And on the other side of it, Mike, if you have some comfort that Vilardi can play in the middle with, the other top players that the Winnipeg Jets have, I think it also adds way more flexibility for what Cheveldayoff can be looking at when it comes to forwards. Like, as it stands right now, if that's not the case, I think they really have to target a center.
Agreed.
If all of a sudden you've got Vilardi going in and being effective in the middle, and you can get a guy that maybe plays mostly on the wing but has a center in the toolbox, like, I think it kind of opens up the number of players that the Jets can consider, and that might allow you to get better value for the deal and a better fit for the team overall.
Agreed. And, I think if you look around the prices on the free agent market, typically you're going to pay more for a center than you are for a winger. Now, there's exceptions, of course, but a centerman tends to carry a bigger price. Going back to your original question, Huss, I agree with you that perhaps a rental as opposed to someone with term, and that there has been a shift in thinking, because the Jets, they now have a lot of pieces locked up, beyond the current season, whether it's Nemestikov or Niederreiter, Iafallo's still under term, right? Like, they've got Kapari now. That depth that they've added also carries term with it. It's not short-term depth, it's long-term depth. And as you say, they're going to need some money here down the road to pay the likes of Cole Perfetti, a pending RFA. So yeah, I mean, when you talk about what they might be looking at, a guy like Henrique, who, as you say, he's experienced from all accounts I've heard of Adam Henrique, just a terrific all-around guy. I don't think there'd be any issue him fitting the culture that the Jets have built. And I think that's an important thing. Rick Bowness talked a little bit about that last week. The Jets have a very good thing going. You obviously want to be careful not to disrupt that in a way. I think you want to reward this group for what they've done. You want to give them all the tools that you can in the toolbox, but you want to make sure they're the right tools for the job. And so everything I've heard about Adam Henrique, quality character, human being, obviously still a very effective player. Are his numbers inflated a bit because he's on a weak team and maybe he's playing an elevated role? Sure. But I think the price for an Adam Henrique, compared to maybe what the Canadians think they're going to get for Sean Monahan, I like Sean Monahan. I think, there's some value there. I absolutely would not be paying a first-round draft pick if the Montreal Canadiens think they're going to get that. Good luck to them. Maybe they will. Maybe there'll be a team that gets desperate. I don't think the Jets would be that team that does that. But yeah, I mean, if you're the Jets and Gabe Vilardi could potentially be an option, then you can look for the BPA, as they say, the best player available, whether it's a winger or a centerman or a mix of both. And it'll be a really interesting stretch here. Like the Jets just have these 2 games left. Then they get the break, and lo and behold, Haas, when we come back out of the player break, we're talking about just over 4 weeks to the trade deadline. I think talk is really going to pick up kind of post All-Star break, and you can really start to maybe hone in on who are the sellers out there, what are they selling, and exactly what do the Jets need.
Well, I mean, I think Anaheim, we don't need to
They're
wait.
selling.
We can put
Yes.
Anaheim in the sellers category. And for a guy like Henrique, who's on the last year of his deal at about 5.8, I believe, I think he'd also be a guy, to be honest, Mike, that, on a short-term basis would probably jump at the opportunity to get in here with Winnipeg. I mean, he has, his rookie season, he had 51 points, played 24 playoff games in that run to the Cup final with New Jersey.
Yeah.
Since then, he's played 4 playoff games for the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, it's been
hungry.
a long time.
Hungry.
He's had tee times booked in the second week of April for the better part of the last decade. And, a guy like that coming into a team that already has their structure, has their successful players. I mean, it's a great opportunity, especially for guys at that point in their career where they can still play, but they need to make the most of every chance. I know there's been a couple other comments of, and Brock Nelson in New York would be a guy that I would be all over. Now,
I
we'll
like
see.
Brock Nelson a lot, yeah.
You know what? They just, fired Lambert and added Patrick Roy. Lou Lamoriello, I don't think, is thinking of selling right now. If anything, they're looking at pushing forward and being part of the playoffs. But this does get back to our conversation about, well, what happens after this year? I mean, if you pull the Jets cap friendly up, every one of their forwards has a contract for next year.
Yes.
And that's without talking about, is a Rucker McGroarty in the mix? I mean, potentially a Brad Lambert, a Chibrikov. I mean, you've got some young players that, if they're not traded potentially at the deadline, would be looking at opportunity. Yep. The only one that doesn't have a deal is Cole Perfetti. He, of course, is an RFA without arbitration, so he will get a deal, whether it's a bridge deal or a longer-term deal. That's another conversation. But, if I'm Shovel Dayoff, knowing the way my roster looks, I mean, listen, if you get a guy that you think can put you over the top that has another year on his deal, you do it and figure it out later. I'm not saying that this is a huge thing, but back to the original point, I think the Jets are far more into and interested in potential rental players for this deadline as opposed to any of the deadlines before. And it sort of brings me back to the blue line if we're thinking of an ad. I know there's a lot of talk about Jacob Chychrun, who has another one, although his rep in Winnipeg may have taken a hit at the expense of Nikolai Ehlers in overtime on the weekend. He was in the wrong spot on a highlight reel play that's been over and over played for Winnipeg Jet fans. But to me, I mean, Chris Tanev would be such a perfect fit for the Winnipeg Jets on the blue line, a guy that could come in, play big, hard, top 6 minutes in the playoffs, and you don't have a commitment beyond the season, although I'm sure they love to keep him around. But, when you think about Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello, who I think the team would love to keep around, the other top 4 are there. And then you've got Stanley, Chisholm, Billy Hainala. I mean, all of these guys, not to mention Elias Salmonson next year. Yeah. I mean, you can't be dressing 10 defensemen for every game right now.
Yeah, and the thing that'll be interesting about Tanev is because he has, I would say his set of tools is pretty unique, right? In terms of the rugged two-way style he plays. There's some offense there for sure. A lot of grit, high character, shot blocker, penalty killer. You wonder if there's going to be a bidding war for a Chris Tanev, maybe a little more than some of the other players on the market. And if there is a bidding war, like how high are the bids going to go, and what would the Jets be willing to pay? It's interesting. One development earlier this week, I think that's worth mentioning, Huss. A guy like Chaz Lucius just got shut down again for the season, and there's a young first rounder who just cannot stay healthy. He's had nothing but injuries follow him around. And I mentioned Chaz Lucius just because if we're talking about a potential, trade chip or an asset that the Jets might have been willing to part with, suddenly that asset is greatly diminished, right? And, if I'm the Jets, I think they would be loath to part with a Brad Lambert. You would have to be really offering something significant. Brad Lambert's having a really nice season. He's going to the All-Star game in the AHL. They're developing him as a center now, as a pro. And to me, Huss, Rucker McGroarty, like if anybody even asks about Rucker McGroarty, Kevin Chevaleo should just be hanging up the phone.
Except if it's Kyle Dubas.
Yeah. It's
shout out to Hammer for that great conversation piece that he dropped.
That's a non-starter with Rucker McGroarty. So, but I mean, the Jets do have some other pieces, of course, and they do have their first-round draft pick. They also have that Montreal pick, which is worth mentioning, that second rounder in the Dubois trade, which, given where the Habs are, is going to be like, a really late first rounder. Like that could be a top 10 pick in the second round.
It's probably going to be around 40th overall, which is so there's
some value there. Now the draft generally isn't regarded to be as deep this summer as it was last year, but the Jets have some pieces to play with for sure. And to your original point, I think given where the Jets are right now, given where they are going forward with so many players under contract, they can cast an extremely wide net. They don't have to be super picky. And so that can include players on expiring deals as pure rentals, which maybe wouldn't have been something that the Jets were as interested in the past. because there was so much uncertainty about a lot of their own core players. That uncertainty is gone. The winger versus center thing is interesting. And again, that's why I'd like some clarity on whether Gabe Balharry could be there and be effective there. And then the blue line for sure, which already is quite crowded here in Winnipeg. And Huss, it's worth noting, if and when the Jets activate Mark Scheifele, if that's tomorrow, and David Gustafsson, I believe David Gustafsson is probably ready to go too. They're just not activating him, because as soon as you activate one or both of Scheifele and Gustafsson, one or two players have to go. There is no room at the inn right now. And whether it's Chisholm, Stanley, Toninato, Fialbi, Gustafsson himself, those guys all need waivers. And if you're the Chicago Blackhawks, who are looking for warm bodies these days to fill out a lineup, there's got to be some fear, if you're the Jets, that you're going to lose a piece or two. And to go back to how we started this conversation, if you're the Jets and you got Scheifele, and I know he wants to get in, how much does punting this down the road a little further, as far as possible, to make a lineup decision? And could the Jets kick this all the way down to after the All-Star break by just maintaining the status quo for these next two games? And then they'll see if everyone gets out of them healthy and then make a decision. I do wonder how much that's playing into things.
Well, we talked about that last week. I mean, do they decide to potentially consider, putting a Declan Chisholm or Logan Stanley on waivers and seeing what happens? I think Axel's probably the first guy to go. We just saw him come out of the lineup first. Yeah. Toninato has changed the conversation around him, though. And whatever about what we say and what fans say, it's very clear that Rick Bowness trusts him. He's playing more and more as guys have gone out of the lineup, and he's playing ahead of Kupari right now. Now, Kupari as an asset is probably something that they're more concerned about losing. A young first-rounder, he's going to get picked up. Someone's going to give him a chance. Maybe that's not the same case with Dominic Toninato, but the way the team is constructed right now, and even this includes if David Gustafsson comes back, I mean, he's played well enough that, there's probably a decision to be made when it comes to the head coach as to who he wants in the lineup. But the organization's put a lot into these young players, and I think they certainly don't want them to go. It's going to be, that is going to be something we'll look at specifically tomorrow. And if it's one, it's probably Axel. But that second activation, I think, does make things somewhat problematic, and just all part of the roster focus we'll have over the course of the next week. Mike, what do you got cooking in the Freep this week?
Well, I'm having a fairly low-key week to start anyways, because Kenny's on the road. So my boss, Jay Bell, has been kind enough to give me a few days off, sort of like some bank days owing, if you will. I'll be back at her when the Jets return to town on Thursday, and of course, covering the big game on Saturday night. And then we'll head into the All-Star break, working on a bit of a project next week. Looking forward to sharing that with readers. But kind of a slow start to the week. Enjoying the nice weather. Both the dogs, Piper and Bodie, they are anxious to go for a bit of a walk here. So I think we'll be heading out for that shortly, Huss.
Beautiful. Get outside, buddy. Enjoy it. It's getting nice, and it's going to stay nice for the next little while, or so they say. Have a good one. Thanks for doing this.
You bet. Take care. Have a great week.
All right. There's Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. We're going to get ready for Sea Bears season in just a minute. Schedule out today. We're going to bring on the coach, Mike Taylor. But a big cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug. I'm predicting record sales of generics and 1919s on Saturday night at Canada Life Center. Of course, Little Brown Jug's now an official partner of the Winnipeg Jets. So you can get Winnipeg's favorite local beer at Canada Life Center in Craft Beer Corner up in Section 310 in the Upper Bowl, and in Craft Beer Corner downstairs in the near where the old Moxie's was in Section 126. And don't forget, generic now on sale, $19.99 for the 8-pack of Tall Boys, available at your local Manitoba liquor marts or any beer store where they sell great beer. Check them out online as well, littlebrownjug.ca, with local delivery options. Speaking of that game on Saturday night, Jets are going to be wearing the 48s, the New Jersey, commemorating the RCAF team. I I can't wait to see them. They look great the first time out. This, I believe, will be our first chance to see Connor Hellebuck wearing his special pads and special kit. If you want to get a 48 or any other Jets merch in time for Saturday or the rest of the season, you know where to go. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, thousands of pieces of Jets merch, tons that you won't find anywhere else, in addition to a great bomber section, tons of NFL gear, hockey equipment, snowboards, boots, bindings, bikes that you can ride in the snow. Listen, you really have to see it to believe it. 40,000 square feet of the best in sports merchandise, licensed team apparel, and lots of cool stuff on the King Skate, Snow, and Surf side. Pop by and see them, 750 Pembina Highway, and follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And no Jets tonight, but a big slate of games in the NHL, 9 in total. Maybe it's a good night to get outside and head over to your local Boston Pizza. Enjoy ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. Certainly tomorrow night will be that night. And hey, any night if you're staying at home, order online, bostonpizza.com, to get it hot and fresh to your door. All right, we'll get to the Coolbet Lines on those 9 games tonight in the National Hockey League in a minute. But first off, let's look ahead to year 2 of the Winnipeg Sea Bears. The schedule has just been announced in the last hour. And to talk about it, we welcome in the coach, Mike Taylor. Coach, what's going on? How are you?
Everything's great, Hustler. Can't wait to get back in the city, get back in the CEBL season. So exciting news with the schedule coming out. And really a lot to look forward to sports-wise this summer.
Mike Taylor joining us, of course, the head coach of the Winnipeg Sea Bears. Mike, first off, it was such a magical first season. How's the offseason been for you so far?
Off-season's been great. I think the big challenge last summer was bringing everything together in a short time. There were a lot of unknowns. Well, this year we've kind of have that year of experience under our belt. We've had the opportunity to see what we've done, try to improve it, try to streamline it and get better in a lot of areas. So I think this is a big chance for us to take some steps forward. We're aiming for that. But I've really enjoyed, all the communication, all the recruiting. We've been very active, and we hope to put together another great team to have another great season in Winnipeg this summer.
I mean, the first season was so special. I mean, as the crowds grew, more and more people got exposed to the Sea Bears product and got hooked, setting records for the CBL. I know you're focused on season 2 right now, but, once you got back home a little bit, did you have a chance to kind of go back in and just soak in everything that your team and the organization accomplished? Because I think it exceeded most people's expectations. I'm not sure about yours personally.
Well, I would agree with that. Yes, very much thankful, very much appreciative. The good people involved, David Asper's vision brought, it to life, created opportunities for many people and opportunities in the city. The response from the city of Winnipeg was something special. Obviously, you talked about all the records of crowds and numbers and things like this, but there was a lot of hard work from many people in the organization that all came together at different levels. I've said it before, the basketball side will get a lot of attention and a lot of credit because we're out there on the court, people come to watch the games. But I think that the front office with Jason and everybody working there, they did a great job with the fan experience. And I just think we clicked with the city. So the goal, we set the bar pretty high. The goal is now not to just relax and feel good about it. The goal is to create, consistency. We want to be a consistent winner. We want to sustain that first season success and build on it and improve. We're working very hard to, bring some key players back. We're working very hard to try to upgrade the team in certain ways. And then it's a hustle, you just get to training camp, you put together the best roster and team you can. And I think the one thing about Winnipeg is they respect effort. Winnipeg as a city loves a team that's going to give effort and play with heart. And you could see our Sea Bears did that last summer. And this is the type of team we want to have again this summer, is a team that plays well together, plays very hard all the time, and gives the city something to be proud of.
Mike, I'm sure that everyone involved in the organization that came in, was excited but didn't really know what to expect. Once the season was completed and everyone went their separate ways, what were the takeaways from the players for the first year of Sea Bears basketball here in Winnipeg?
Well, I would like to think that the takeaways were they had a great summer. I think it starts with a connection between the front office, the management, the ownership, and us as a coaching staff. We want it to be a great player experience in Winnipeg. We want them to feel like they can come in and focus on their basketball, develop their game, and take their game to other opportunities and make the next steps in their career. And I feel like the way the city treated the players and treated us and received us and supported us gave them just so much energy and such a special feeling. And this is kind of the thing we want to build on. We want to try to build on that connection with the city. We want to continue that great first-class player experience. And again, just keep building the organization as, hey, this is a place, a destination that players want to come play in the summer to develop and make those next steps.
Now, we'll get into the schedule with the opening game, home opener. Mark it in your calendars right now, folks. May 24th down at Canada Life Center. I imagine now for you, back in Jacksonville and the rest of the staff working hard to put together year 2 of Sea Bears basketball. Give us a little peek behind the scenes as to what's happening right now and how things are coming along, putting together the squad.
Yeah, I think that, we have a really good structure in terms of the way we're operating. Our goal is, to continue with some continuity with some of the players from last season that fans can have some identification with the team. Obviously, key guys, Chad Posthumous, hometown guy, Simon Hildebrand, Winnipeg guy at the University of Manitoba, U Sport Player of the Year, Teddy Allen, MVP. We're trying to bring back certain players that will give that, the fans familiarity, like, hey, I remember this guy from last year. I enjoyed watching these guys play. Here's some hometown players. Our methodology, we're trying to fill the Canadian spots on the roster first, and then we'll try to balance some really impactful import players around them. It's at the point where we don't want to get into too many details about the players that we're involved with. But we've really worked hard at our recruiting at this point. I think we're involved with some very good Canadian players that can help upgrade our team, upgrade our roster. We want to sign those key guys back, certain key guys back. And then, again, like, for example, last weekend, David Asper, Jason Smith, and I were in Las Vegas watching some G League basketball, meeting with some players that we felt like, hey, these guys can be impact players for us this summer. So, again, if there's opportunities to get on the road and go see a player, we're ready to do that. We're ready to, have these individual workouts and go to some events and games to see people play. At the same time, we're continuing to look at the U Sport players. We've scouted a lot of the Canadian colleges and university basketball. Fortunately, we've got obviously Ryan Thompson at Lakehead, Mike Rainbow at Winnipeg. These guys are really plugged in and can help us get, top players like a Simon Hildebrand, a Tyler Sagal that can help contribute and help our team. And then the last part of our organizational depth, we want to continue to build on that relationship with the University of Winnipeg, the University of Manitoba, and get these young U Sport players experience with our practice squad and just training with the Sea Bears and continuing to build that connection in that way with the city. So I feel like we're in a great place right now. We're involved with some really good players. And then, like I said, it's just a hustle to bring it all together. Last year, it came together quickly at the end, and we hope we can bring it together for another really good roster and really good team this summer.
You mentioned Simon Hildebrand. He dropped 41 in a game on the weekend, and Kirby's Bison squad looking pretty good this year. So it's great for fans to be able to kind of follow that. I think there's probably a little more attention on both the college teams in town because of player involvement with the club last year. I would imagine, Mike, from a recruiting perspective, it's a very different story this year, having had the success that you had both on the court and in the stands. How much of the support of Winnipeg and the environment that you and your team played in, how much of that helps you when you're having conversations with people that might not be as familiar with the CEBL or Winnipeg?
Well, it's a big deal. I can tell you from a phone call yesterday with a player that we're talking with. He's currently playing overseas, playing well. He said, hey, if I play in the CBL, I've told my agents, I've told my coaches, I want to play in one place. That's Winnipeg. And this is a guy who played for a different team this past summer. I think that the whole atmosphere, the crowd, the facility, everything just came together and really gave a great impression. I think that it's a destination for players. And again, we've treated people in the right way with that whole player experience that make players say, hey, if I have the opportunity to go, I want to try to go play in Winnipeg. And last year where there were the unknowns and like, hey, Mike, that sounds really nice. I love what you're saying to me, but you got to, show me. Now we have the opportunity. We've put together a great recruiting video that we've sent out to some players and some key people. We've put together a really good little recruiting package for guys. And again, I think we've made a great impression. So we're doing our very best to try to put together a great roster, and hopefully we'll come together and the fans will, respond to the team in the same way. And it'll be, something that we all feel like, hey, we're building on year one and we're getting better and taking it to the next level in year two.
Mike, this is a more a general question because, we'll see what the team looks like when we get to the stadium on May 24th to kick off the home portion of the season. But, in leagues like this, it sort of changes from season to season as to how much player turnover there is. In the CEBL in general and with the Sea Bears, like how different will this team look? Do you expect to have a few returnees outside of the CEBL players like Simon?
Well, we hope that we can. The league as it is with the timing, sometimes players are playing overseas because that's important for their careers. You can't really just rely on the CEBL at this point. So guys are, for example, Jelani's playing in Belgium, Teddy's playing in England. Shane is overseas in Qatar. We've got a handful of guys that are playing overseas. Our players and the players that we're recruiting, sometimes they're involved with leagues that will go into June or into the CEBL summer. So that impacts the availability. Maybe there's a player who says, man, I'm worn out, or he's got a 2-year contract and his team won't let him play. So they say, hey, I'm going to pass on it this summer. Another player may have some personal situation like I'm going to have a wedding or there's something going on in my family. So there's a lot of reasons that you kind of have to manage and have to juggle with the player personnel. But I think, you can find guys that, fit that time of the season, that fit that time of their career. And you can kind of put together a team that, for me, the important thing is that guys are here, that guys play. You don't want to have guys coming in and out all summer. You don't want to try to, build up just sign guys for the last 5 games just for the playoffs. I think that's a mistake that a lot of other teams will make. Our team last year, we had one roster move and tried to keep everyone together until EJ left us at the end. For me, you try to identify the players who are committed. You try to identify the players who it fits. And when you can have some continuity, that's a great thing. But the nature of it is you have to juggle a lot of things and be ready for some change.
I'll imagine from a recruiting perspective, there's nothing like positive word of mouth from players that have been here before. And I imagine that's something that is will be helping you over the course of the next couple months, whether guys are able to come back or doing other things from last year's squad.
Without a doubt. And I want to say, last year, Chad Posthumous played such a key role in terms of contacting friends and contacting people and players in the league. And he ran into it like me. He was like, hey, yeah, Chad, that story sounds good. Mike, that story sounds good. Now there's the whole player experience, quality facilities, quality living situation, great support in the city, just all the way around. And I think, a guy like Chad that's now able to, pick up the phone and make a call to a team, a colleague that he's played with or somebody he knows. I think the reception has been really, really positive from our coaching staff wise, from the players in the league that are contacting and communicating with each other. I think just everything is so positive about Winnipeg, and that's just a great thing. It makes me very happy. Even the impact of the Sea Bears that, boys and girls in basketball has picked up 23% in Manitoba. The Sea Bear effect has been so positive in so many ways, and I'm just really thankful and proud to be a part of it. We hope that we can take it to the next level in year 2. There's definitely a positive vibe and a positive feeling in terms of that word of mouth among people.
Sea Bears coach Mike Taylor with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Here are the details on the Sked, fans. Home openers May 24th. It's a 10-week schedule, 10 games at home, 10 on the road. You got 6 weekend games, 4 during the week. And it wraps up for the last regular season home game on July 23rd. I mean, you see the names. We don't really know what the teams are going to look like. Anything stand out from the schedule to you, Mike? Or when you get that, what's the first thing that a head coach does?
Well, I think you always look at the schedule and you're always thinking like, ooh, this one's going to be tough, or, oh, this travel is going to be tough. You're always kind of looking at it in a, I don't want to say skeptical way, but you look at the challenges of it first. And, but I think it's always a good thing when there's that little bit of feeling like, man, we got to get to work. We got to get to work, so it's a motivational point. I think we've got a lot of great home games in the middle of the season. So I think that can be great for fans. I think it can be great for the players. There's so much travel and so much in and out all the time that gives us a little bit of stability in the city. Again, to me, the point is to get the team right now, get the team right in the preseason and the buildup. And when you do that, then the rest of it takes care of itself in a lot of ways. But we respect the schedule. I think, a lot of fans didn't get a chance to see Scarborough. We played them on the road last year. Scarborough, Ottawa now coming out to Winnipeg. We've got the natural rivalry with Saskatchewan, kind of firing up some of those rivalry, like the Blue Bombers and Riders rivalry that's naturally there. So, I like those games with the Rattlers. And again, I just really think that we've got some great games in our conference. Obviously Calgary had a great year last year. My personal ties with Vancouver, and then also to Edmonton, there's that feeling like, hey, let's get these guys back for the way the season ended. So a lot of things to look forward to for fans, a lot of things to look forward to for our team. And we're really excited about the schedule coming out today and getting plans ahead for the summer.
Sea Bears head coach Mike Taylor with us. You can find out more on season tickets and flex packs right now. The single game tickets will go on sale in April. Mike, just a quick question on your thoughts on just the overall health and momentum the CEBL as a league has going into this upcoming season.
Yeah, I love it. I'm such a big fan of the CEBL. It's been so much fun to be a part of for the last 2 years, first in Vancouver and now next level in Winnipeg. Absolutely love Winnipeg and what we've done in the market. I think David Asper and everyone that we've worked with within our organization, we've helped raise the bar. It's challenged, I think, a lot of other teams and organizations in the league. And now what do we see? We see like-minded ownership in Calgary going into the Saddle Dome. We see Edmonton trying to get into the Rogers Center. I feel like the league is making the next steps. They're intelligently looking at expansion. So whether that's more teams, more games, I think they'll pick those spots at the right time. Remember, the league is only 5 years old. So I really love the direction it's going. There's certain inherent parts that are improved. We're able to pay the players a little bit more this summer. The salary cap is up a little bit. So I think that all in all, on the floor, off the floor, there's a lot of positive momentum about the CEBL. And the best thing for teams and organizations to do is focus on yourselves. Try to get yourselves better. Try to make those next steps. As I said, we set the bar high as an expansion team. It was a dream come true for us last year. Now the challenge is, don't just sit back and relax. Let's try to get better. Let's take it to the next step. Let's improve in the areas that we feel we can improve. And every little bit counts. If we can make small steps in a lot of different areas, it's going to end up in a big step forward. And what I'd like to see is that a lot of the organizations around the league are also pushing themselves, trying to make those steps. When that all comes together, I think the league makes big progress.
Mike, cannot wait to get back out there. We had so much fun going to the games last year and seeing this thing grow, and cannot wait for year two. When did we see the coach back here with boots on the ground in the peg?
Yeah, there's possibilities that I'll get back in town from this point till training camp. But last year it was early May that I was back in the city. Our training camp opens May 13th. So that's kind of a timeline, early May for me. What I like about the schedule right now, there's the big youth sport tournament towards the end of the season at Manitoba coming up. So there's some possibilities I get back into the city then. I'm really excited about, getting back up there. I feel great about Winnipeg. Had such a wonderful personal experience there last summer with all the good people. And I'm very thankful for the support from David and Jason. And again, we want to take it to the next level. So a lot to look forward to. It's going to come up quick. We can start signing our protected players February 1st, and then all free agents are available March 2nd. So, it's coming up to a busy time. We're trying to position ourselves well here over the next couple of weeks.
Well, cannot wait to hear about some player moves, bringing players back, new guys, and of course, keeping an eye on the U Sports players like Simon Hildebrand, who's having another great season in year 2 with the Manitoba Bisons. Mike, all the best over the next few weeks. I imagine we'll be catching up at some point before the season, but great to have a schedule right now and look forward to year 2 of Sea Bears basketball. Have a great one, and thanks for stopping by.
Hustler, thank you. We appreciate you, and a lot of love to all the Sea Bear fans in Winnipeg. See you soon.
All right, great stuff with Coach Mike Taylor. Appreciate him jumping on, and looking forward to year 2 of the Winnipeg Sea Bears. Listen, we got to get to the Coolbet Lines and some interesting breaking news from the National Hockey League, which we'll touch on in just 1 second. Do want to thank our great friends at Aitken's Lake Wilderness Lodge. I know they're getting ready for a big summer coming up. Check out aikenslake.com. Find out more about the world-class Aitken's experience and get working on a booking for 2024. As great as the fishing is, the only thing better is the incredible hospitality of the Terrens and the Aitken's Lake family. Again, aikenslake.com on all your socials. Aitken's at Aitken's Lake on all the socials. aikenslake.com on Twitter. And, probably we're going to resume our It Takes a Community to Play series next week. But don't forget, safe sport in the community is so important right now. We've discussed a number of angles of this going forward, but details and resources are available at sportmanitoba.ca/safe sport. A great place to start. Best practices for sport programs, including the rule of 2, training opportunities, as everyone deserves a safe and positive sport experience. And looking forward to our next. Great feedback on this series so far. And, of course, Sport Manitoba, all these supported by our friends at Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. Remo, we'll get to the lines in a minute because it's a busy day in the National Hockey League. We do got to get this podcast up. But just as we were talking to Coach Mike Taylor, the Philadelphia Flyers announcing that goaltender Carter Hart is taking a leave from the club. You want to get that presser up, the tweet up, I guess, that the team just put forward. What's interesting about this, and again, there's no details as to anything behind the scenes, but simply this is from Danielle Briere. Carter Hart has requested and been granted an indefinite leave of absence citing personal reasons. The club will have no further comment of this time. Of course, Urson, who stoned the Jets a couple of weeks ago, he's in net tonight against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But coming off the heels of Dylan Dubé's personal absence from the Calgary Flames, Remo, a lot of people connecting the dots that both of these individuals were members of the 2018 Canadian World Junior Hockey team that had the sexual assault scandal. And not necessarily saying that they are. It could be a coincidence. But a lot of people are sort of connecting the dots here and thinking that we may be hearing more because that had been in the back. I guess there was a challenge of it. We were supposed to hear about it in the fall. There still has been no official report coming forward, but it could be a coincidence. But needless to say, a lot of people are kind of looking at this and wondering whether the next shoe is going to drop from Hockey Canada.
Yeah, it was on Sunday that the Flames announced Dylan Dubé on indefinite leave to attend to his mental health is what they said, and you wish these guys all the best. However, there is this connection between them and Hockey Canada, and see some people on Twitter saying, does this mean something is going to happen? We'll have to wait and see, but that was the news.
Yeah, we hadn't heard a lot about that. At some point, there were things going on, and Hockey Canada was not able to comment on anything publicly. But as Steve Simmons just put forth, Carter Hart and Dylan Dubé, both members of Junior Team Canada 2018, have taken leaves from their NHL teams. Might be just a coincidence, unrelated. but it appears as though some sort of ruling on the sexual assault scandal may be coming shortly. And that is, obviously huge news in the NHL and something that I think for many of us is sort of long overdue. But some finality on that. I mean, Hockey Canada's had all this change. The entire board's been overturned. There's new people in charge there, which I think everyone agreed was very necessary to happen. The one thing that hadn't had is any sort of repercussions for the players that were involved in the incident. And again, we don't know that it's Carter Hart or Dylan Dubé, but there's plenty of speculation that, maybe this is an indication that that is coming. Well, obviously, we'll be all over that tomorrow on the program if we have any more information on that. Let's get to the games tonight over on the Coolbet Lines for our friends at coolbet.com. Shout out to P. Greggy. We did the lock shop yesterday. We had a beautiful 3-gamer. We had under 5.5 in the Jet game. We had Florida to win, and we had Vegas. Vegas blew it against the Devils. Bruce Cassidy called the Vegas Golden Knights playing like a beer league team last night. And Pete Greggy did a nice little favor for all the lock shoppers that missed out on the partner parlay last night in OT. So we're back at it tonight. We'll let you know of that in just a second. But Dallas is at Detroit. Dallas a -155 road favorite. Alex Lyon in net. It's going to be Lyon and Ottinger. Detroit +131. Ottawa's in Montreal. Ottawa, the road favorite at -138. Lightning and the Flyers. That game basically a pick'em. As we mentioned, Urson starting for Philly. -110 Philly. -107 Tampa. I do like Tampa in that one. Vegas playing the second net of back-to-back to take on Patrick Roy and the Islanders. Vegas +132. Islanders -156. Capitals are in mini to take on the Wild. The Wild -168 favorites. Calgary -176 home favorites against the Blues. The Oilers a massive -365 favorite to keep their incredible winning streak going against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Buffalo's favorite on the road in Anaheim. Sabres -156. And the Rangers a massive -362 favorite against the Sharks, who got a win last night against the Kings, but now going up against one of the top teams in the East tonight. If you go over to the Coolbet exclusives, we've cooked up a nice partner parlay. We were an OT goal away from cashing last night. Hopefully we can do it this evening. We've got Ottawa, Montreal over 6.5 goals. We've got the Red Wings to win as a home dog against Dallas, and Buffalo in Anaheim. That was +572 when we built it. The guys have boosted it up to +650. And if you want to go in on just an Oilers-specific parlay for tonight, we've got McDavid to score a goal, Bouchard and Nuge both to get a point, and the Oilers to win in regulation. That one is +425, both under the Lock Shop Partner Parlay. And quick reminder, if you do bet golf, we were kind of going through this, and at the end of the Lock Shop, we realized the Farmers Open starts tomorrow. So there are some Farmers Open exclusives as well there. Nice big make the cut parlay, the big four versus the field, and all your options. I'm riding with my guy Tony Finau. He's played well at the Farmers before. He's at 25-1. It's all there at Coolbet for you. Also the men's and women's semis and quarters at the Aussie Open. And, of course, the NFL lines, just to keep you up to date, haven't really moved since yesterday. Ravens still -3.5-point favorites against the Chiefs, although the Chiefs' money line is now up to +162. Did not think it would get that high. And the Lions are 6.5-point underdogs in Frisco against the Niners. Detroit +260 on the money line, and the Niners -323. Tomorrow, Remo, Jets back at it in Toronto. Looking forward to the game and looking forward to tomorrow's show.
We're looking forward to it, but we got to put a finish on today's show, Huss, and there's only one way we can do that. Here it is. We're raising a banner. Rest in peace to the streak. 34 games. It's going up there. We'll remember this forever, but it's time to move on. It was great while it lasted. We had many good times. Unfortunately, the team cared more about winning than history. So
streak.
No one will remember, that loss that they lost, but, maybe could have lost by 1, but everyone will talk about 34 games, allowing 3 goals or fewer for the rest of time. Incredible run.
Memorialized with a banner on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Mm-hmm.
Great work on the banner to the WST art department. Gang, that's gonna do it for us. Yes, Phil said, "Oh, that's really nice." Gregory Liverpool liking it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it was an incredible run. It was a great streak. Let's start another one tomorrow against the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll be live at 1. Ken Weeb back from the road. Kenny's going to join us tomorrow. Murat's going to jump on Friday. We'll look to get someone from the Leafs side of things. Later on this week, we're hoping to have Brian Hayes join us, which should be a lot of fun. And, of course, all our regulars with the latest on the Winnipeg Jets. Gang, have a great one tonight. Enjoy. Get outside. It's gorgeous out after this brutal last week we've had. And do whatever you got to do to clear your schedule for tomorrow when the Jets take on the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first end of a home-and-home series. Thanks to Coach Mike Taylor, Carlo Colaiacovo, and Mike McIntyre, and all of you for jumping by WST today. Have a great afternoon and evening. Shout out to everyone listening on podcast. Thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen every day. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. live on YouTube on WST.
Oh, my God! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.